Sports Network welcomes you to the following presentation of the Tour de France.
Guts do indeed lead to glory. A tenacious Stage 1 ride means Fabian Cancellara is once again the man in yellow. This man has spent the past 4 years reeling in Tour de France stage wins at a radical rate. Today, Mark Cavendish hopes a 21st victory is in his crosshairs. An unpredictable first stage meant a problematic ride for some.
Oh, there's been a crash on the road here.
And as the roads turned upward, so did the uncertainty. The prologue winner had yet another victory within his reach. But with a late closing burst, this Tour newcomer announced his presence with a dash across the line.
Sagan is coming clear to get his first stage win. That is unbelievable.
Though the leader earned the chance to wear cycling's most coveted symbol for another day. On the road just ahead, speed suddenly plays a starring role as the Tour's reigning sprint king faces familiar challengers, fast-paced competitors who have outrun him head-to-head before. A swift day of sprints awaits at Stage 2 of the Tour de France. Back in Belgium, the grandest of jerseys being worn by La Grande Place. It's a speedy stage, too, a firm and flat 129-mile jaunt for the riders as they rip their way towards a fast and furious finish here in Tournai. Hey everyone, I'm Liam McHugh. Welcome to Tour de France Live, presented by Cadillac. One stage down, 19 to go on our 2,173-mile journey to Paris. If day one's prologue featured form and yesterday's first stage race was a test of strength, then in today's stage 2, the spotlight shines on the sprinters, as we have what appears to be a very flat final day in Belgium. With that, I bring in Bob Roll. The finish line, just about 75 meters over your left shoulder. We are just about 6 miles away from France. Today, Belgium, France tomorrow. Let's take a look back, though. Yesterday, 22-year-old Peter Sagan became the youngest rider to win a Tour stage since 1993, when a 21-year-old named Lance Armstrong won a stage. Bob, I'm not saying this guy's going to win 7 tours, but how bright is his future?
Well, when in one of the most eagerly anticipated debuts in the Tour de France in many years, a young man in a hurry from Slovakia called Peter Sagan absolutely lit up the road and had a brilliant stage win. He promised it with 13 wins so far this year, and he delivered on his talent and promise big time in stage number 1 in the Tour de France yesterday.
You mentioned the wins over the course of May and June. He racked up 10 wins, and what do you know, on the first day of July, he starts it off with another. Let's take a look back.
He found the right wheel. He followed the attacking Fabian Cancellara in the yellow jersey. That's the man on the front who's already opened up clear daylight to the peloton. Peter Sagan right on his wheel. Edvald Boasson-Hagen also clever enough to find Sagan's wheel, but didn't quite have the strength. You can see Sagan continuing to look over his shoulder. Once he looks down at the street, though, and digs for the finish line, no one has an answer for that. Boasson-Hagen perhaps could have come around, but Peter Sagan, with an incredible burst of speed, comes around Fabian Cancellara. Once he sees the finish line, there's no stopping the young man from Slovakia. Great stage win.
This is what we call the Slovakian gun show, I believe. Is that what you labeled it yesterday? He said, I'm not afraid of anything. Fear is certainly not a factor for Fabian Cancellara either. He hangs on to the yellow jersey as we take a look at the Michelob Ultra overall standings. Bradley Wiggins, right where he wants to be, second place, 7 seconds back, and the American TJ Van Garderen in the 4 spot, Bob.
And Cadel Evans moving up into 8th overall. Philippe Gilbert moves into 7th. Nibali looking very dangerous, a great climber, in 9th overall in the overall standings.
As for Fabian Cancellara in the yellow jersey, we know this much. He is focused. He is determined. I do want to read this quote to you from yesterday after the race. He said, quote, "If I go for something, I go all the way. I'm not going to give up. That is simply not me. And he showed it.
Fire, fire! Go! Allez, Fabian! Yeah! Allez, go, go, go! Sagan is on the wheel. So just Sagan is on your wheel. If somebody can do it, it's you. Hey, come on, come on! But keep going, keep going, keep going! Go, go, go! Go, Fabian, go, Fabian, go, Fabian! Just keep going, keep going! Come on, come on, come on! There's a big gap, and you're gone, with you three there. You're gone, eh? You have to believe that you even can win the stage. You're the strongest, eh, Fabian? You are the strongest. Believe us. The sprint for powerful guys, and what I have seen from you yesterday, come on, eh? You can do it, Fabian, come on, come on! Come on, full gas, full gas, full gas, full gas! Come on, Fabian, come on, stay there, go, 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 go! All to the finish, yeah! What a performance, Fabian. Unbelievable good, what a performance.
First off, that was excellent. Secondly, I can't tell you how similar it is to what we hear in our ears from our producer, just basically all show long. Cancellara, we knew this guy had a ton of talent, though. How impressed were you with his toughness?
Well, he has diabolical power. They don't call him the Swiss time machine for nothing. He's a great time trialist, but he is also very competitive in the open roads, and that was an incredible display of power and panache to defend the yellow jersey. That is the right way to get it done.
He has the yellow jersey, he defends the yellow jersey. How long can he hang on to the yellow jersey?
Well, in stage number 7 is a tough climb to the finish, a Category 1 climb to the finish line. Long, hard climb at the end. That's probably going to spell the end of Fabian Cancellara's days in the yellow jersey, but it will have been a great run if he's able to achieve that. And barring disaster, barring a crash within sight of the finish line, he should be able to achieve that.
Hangs on to it in stage 1, of course. Today, stage number 2, very early going in this stage so far. We take a live look in at the action. This is the peloton, but there is a 3-man lead group, Bob, with an 8-minute gap.
Still under control of the teams of the sprinters now. Looks like Lotto's coming to the front. And also the Radio Shack riders doing a lot of work on yesterday's stage. Hopefully, Fabian Cancellara being quoted as saying some of the other teams can come forward and help us do the pacemaking throughout the stage.
Stage 2 of the Tour de France. Phil and Paul provide predictions when we return. The 2012 Tour de France Live on the NBC Sports Network is presented.
Cancellara's got the form because he's making a nasty little move here, but he's covered by Peter Sagan. There are not many men in the world can do this.
He goes again.
He'd like to win the stage if he could, but he's got two very, very fast sprinters on his wheel.
And now it is Sagan going for the victory. This is the first Tour de France for Peter Sagan, and Sagan is coming clear to get his first stage win at the first attempt. That is unbelievable.
First off, you did a little research on the pose down. You've discovered something here about Peter Sagan.
Yes, apparently it's the funky chicken, the Slovakian version of that, so get ready for a lot of this.
It sounds like a joke. Actual research was done in that. That's the past. Let's talk about today. Slightly longer stage, but perhaps less tricky, less challenging terrain. Let's fire up the Geico stage map. Bob, a guided tour.
Most definitely a lot flatter than stage number 1. Also, dead flat run into the finish in Tournai. 207 total kilometers going due west from the town of Visé, just outside of Liège. We're still in Belgium for the first 3 days of the Tour de France this year. Watch out for this sprint point with 54.5 miles to go. See if Mark Cavendish comes out to play. But in Tournai, the sprinters will most be certainly coming out to play on today's stage.
That's the stage. How about the facts? Nothing but the stage facts for stage number 2, Visé to Tournai. Just that one climb, as Bob mentioned, the intermediate sprint point. We saw an interesting intermediate sprint yesterday. We have another one today. It's at 54.5 kilometers to go. Only the third time in Tournai. We haven't been there since 1966. It's a sprint stage. Debatable. We think there's only maybe 6 or 7 really true sprint stages in this tour. So we're expecting a field sprint at the end. What else should we expect from the stage?
I think that the intermediate sprint will be very curious to see who goes for that. Will Greipel go for it? Will Matt Goss go for it? Cavendish certainly went for it yesterday's stage. And those riders will be competing for the green jersey throughout the rest of the Tour de France.
That's a breakdown of the course right now. The moment of great significance. It is time for Cadillac Performance Predictions. The standings will indicate that we have a very, very tight race here. They also show us that on the first 2 days, the men who picked first both picked winners. Phil Liggett leads 6-4 for other guys. I believe up today first is Paul Sherwin. Paul, I'm not sure if this is correct because Phil has told us that he has led from wire to wire last year. He wants everyone to know that. Paul, did you ever lead at all last year? Because if you get it right today, you could grab that lead.
Yes, I could, but the problem is the guys who pick first have always got the win, and I've got to pick first. I might break that tradition. So I'm going to go for the fastest man, we think, in the race anyway, Mark Cavendish. And I hope that I'm not the bringer of doom for the Brit, because he is fast, but he very often makes a mess in the first couple of sprint stages before he goes on to win 4, 5 and 6 stages in a Tour de France. So I'll have to stick with the Brit, and I'll have to stick with Mark Cavendish.
All right, well, I wasn't here, Liam, according to popular vote in 1966 when we last came to Tournai, but it will be a sprint win. And, you know, they were friends. They are friends. They were teammates last year, Matthew Goss and Mark Cavendish. Mark will lose today to Mark Cavendish, and he'll have to say beating Matthew Goss for the Olympic gold medal. So it's Mark Cavendish to retain yellow for me. Sorry, Matthew Goss to retain yellow for me. Oh, dear.
Oh, too many marks in this race. But you've got full marks.
Either way, so we have Mark Cavendish, we have Goss, we have a former teammate. Are you picking a former teammate as well of Mark Cavendish?
I most certainly am. I'm picking Andre Greipel, the second winningest man in cycling so far this year. Peter Sagan now 14 wins, but Andre Greipel 12 wins on the season. I'm looking for him to add to his total. One of the very fastest men, also one of the few riders in the field with a completely dedicated lead-out train. So the fast man from Journey, a lot of pressure. They've brought a team. He asked for a lead-out train. Lotto has done that for him. Now he has to deliver the goods.
Let's go back to Phil and Paul. You guys are in the booth right by the finish. No one picked the American Tyler Farrar. We saw last July 4th in a sprint stage. He picked up a victory. Not a great year for Tyler Farrar since then. Do you think he'll challenge?
He will challenge, yes. I think he's not riding like he did a year ago. But, you know, you only need a little bit of luck to fall your way in a sprint finish, and you're a winner again. And I think we will be talking of Tyler up there. And it could be today. Hey, we're supposed to be experts, but there's no reason why Tyler can't be there.
Yeah, and don't forget, we are looking at a Tour de France this year with a lot of sprinters. I mean, we've only picked 3 of the top sprinters in the world. There are probably 10 of the top sprinters in the world here, and Tyler Farrar is definitely one of them. What man we might have forgotten, of course, is Peter Sagan, the winner of yesterday.
Oh, dear.
22 years old, won his first stage yesterday. We'll see if he's in the mix today. Guys, thanks so much for your picks. Good luck. Enjoy the stage. Let's bring it back to Tyler Farrar, though. He wins that stage on July 4th. Thought perhaps an American star born on the 4th of July, Independence Day. What have you seen since?
He's had some struggles since then. He hasn't won a race, actually. And for a sprinter as successful as Tyler Farrar is, it's a little bit hard to imagine. He had gone through some very dramatic circumstances leading up to that win, especially the loss of his best friend, Wouter Welands, who died in a crash in the Giro d'Italia just a few weeks before last year's tour started. And Tyler Farrar has struggled so far to find that same form, that same fitness, that same motivation, that same passion, maybe perhaps still recuperating from a really dramatic year last year. And we'll see. I think that as the Tour de France goes along, Tyler will be able to win a stage eventually. I just don't think it's this early.
Stage 2 is meant for the fast men. It is underway right now as we take a live look at race action. A 3-man group is 7:40 up. We expected a breakaway. Will it last, or are people going to overreact and think that the sprinters won't eventually come up there?
I don't think this one is going to work out today. It's going to be a long time before a breakaway succeeds, because so many sprinters in the Tour de France this year, so many teams. Lotto has to win some stages in the sprints, also Orica, and they will do everything they can to chase down this breakaway before the finishing time.
So we look at the current leaders here of Stage 2. The one that stands out is the King of the Mountains.
There he is in the polka dot jersey. That's Michael Morkov. He won that jersey yesterday, going to consolidate his lead. Category 4 climbs, the lowest value of climbs and presumably the easiest, and he only get 1 point for each one of those. Only one rider. Morkov won 3 yesterday. He's looking to win another one today.
We showed you the man in the polka dot jersey. Last year, the man who won the green jersey was the Manx Missile, Mark Cavendish. We'll bring you an interview with him coming up. He talks goals and motivation heading into Stage 2. Back after this. The 2012 Tour de France Live on the NBC Sports Network is presented by Cadillac, the new standard of the world. Welcome back to Tour de France Live, joined now by Scott Moniger. Scott, yesterday we watched Peter Sagan pick up his 14th win in 2012. Not only that, he wins in his first ever road stage at the Tour de France. That hadn't been done since back in 1995. He looked extremely fast, passing Fabian Cancellara down the stretch. Yet despite that fact, nobody picked him to win this stage. Did a little research, head-to-head sprints. Him and Mark Cavendish 2-0 against him, but he finished 3rd and 4th in those sprints. He's a fast guy. Does he have what it takes to beat Mark Cavendish?
You know, that's a pretty tough comparison when you think about it. You know, Cavendish has a lot of speed, just pure speed, and Sagan has a lot of power, and he used that power yesterday to really, you know, and the course to achieve his wins. It's a little bit like comparing Ben Roethlisberger to Peyton Manning. You know, they're the top of their game. They're both quite proficient at what they do, but they have much different skill set in which they achieve those wins. So I think yesterday was clearly a case, you know, and a really good course for Sagan. Today, I think, is all Cavendish.
And I glossed over it rather quickly, the fact that in his first ever road stage at the Tour, he picks up a victory. You're equating that with a baseball reference.
Well, if you were a young player and you stepped up to bat, a 4th cleanup hitter in your first game in the World Series, had 3 men on base and clobbered a grand slam home run. That's similar to what Sagan did yesterday. An incredible run. And the pressure is unbelievable. It's so intense. They brought him here. Liquigas Cannondale, 22 years old, said stage number 1 in the Tour de France is why we're bringing you to this race. He made absolutely no mistakes. He rode flawlessly, tactically, finding Cancellara's wheel. That was an unexpected attack by Cancellara. Sagan found the wheel and had enough to come around him. That was a great ride.
He's a confident kid. You got to figure his confidence is sky high coming off of stage 1. Can he beat Cavendish?
He eventually will be able to. Thanks for putting me on the spot. Eventually, he will have enough speed to beat Cavendish on a flat stage, but it won't be today, stage number 2 of the Tour de France. Mark Cavendish has a lot riding on this. This might be his only legitimate chance in the first week to win a stage, and I don't think he's going to miss out on that.
So we're taking a look right now at Peter Sagan. Actually, that's Vincenzo Nibali we're taking a look at right now as we take a look at live racing. Stage 2, the Tour de France, rolling through Belgium. Cavendish perhaps not just worried about helping his own teammate win Yelly, maybe concerned about a few former teammates now competing as sprint rivals. We mentioned Goss, we mentioned Greipel in the picks, but let's talk about Renshaw. Is it less about getting beat by Renshaw as it is that perhaps he may miss Renshaw as a lead-out man?
I think he will definitely miss Mark Renshaw in his lead-out train. He has one man, Bernie Eisel, with him, but Mark Renshaw has a chance for himself. He's gone over to the Rabobank team to lead their sprint crew. The presumption being Mark Renshaw was sacrificing himself for Cavendish when Cavendish won his stages, and at times Renshaw seemed to be just as fast as Cavendish. Now the presumption being he takes his chance, he should be able to beat Mark Cavendish, but emotionally it's a different game. When you're leading your team and you have all that pressure, sometimes things don't go as well. So for Mark Renshaw, it's going to be a big challenge to win a stage of the Tour de France. But if he's able to do that, it will be a very successful tour.
A big challenge for him. Is Renshaw a serious threat to Cavendish?
You know, this is a little bit like breaking up the Rolling Stones. You know, last year they had the Columbia HCC was all about Mark Cavendish, and now, you know, they've taken Mick Jagger out of the mix, and these guys have gone separate ways, and they're just not having the same success. The chemistry's not there. So I don't really have Mark Renshaw on the radar.
You know, every time we have a sprint stage in the Tour de France, it becomes an opportunity for Cavendish not only to pad his resume, but also provide a little bit of an assault on the history books. We look right now, he has 20 stage wins, and if you look, that's only in 5 tours. You figure he's going to get up there with Bernard Hinault. Eddie Merckx, who knows? It possibly could happen. So much is at stake, and earlier he chatted with Steve Barrino.
Mark, a lot of people very interested, obviously, in Peter Sagan. We haven't seen this matchup very often. How much does a new guy like that whet your appetite at the end of the day?
It's not really a bunch sprinter. Yesterday wasn't a bunch sprint, you know. It's like comparing, it's like asking how TJ Van Garderen whets my appetite. It's just
but on a day like today?
I don't think he could win today, Sagan, but I don't think so.
What's it like being in the peloton with a lot of guys who were in your lead-out train and stuff? Is it friendly out there until it gets to the last little bit?
Well, even in the last little bit, we're all still friends, you know. We all have big respect for each other, and that's quite nice, you know.
A lot of talk about the likelihood of you might do some freelancing towards the end. If it can't be a sky wheel at the end, where do you think you'll be looking?
Any wheel that's better, that's going faster than me, I think, you know. I can't really, it's the Tour de France, you can't really look for someone. The sprints don't work like that. It's not like on a mountain where it's all happening in slow motion, you know. You have to kind of chop and change as it happens.
If you were a guessing man?
I don't know.
Thanks, Mark. Good luck.
Mark Cavendish isn't guessing. He's kind of dismissing Peter Sagan, which is pretty interesting. We'll see how that all plays out. Either way, yesterday we saw him in the intermediate sprint. He really looked like he was going after it, which kind of makes you think that perhaps he's going after that green jersey, which is the sprinter's jersey. Team Sky, they have an interesting thing going on right now. Obviously, you have Cavendish, the defending green jersey winner. They also have Bradley Wiggins, who is chasing the yellow jersey. No team has won both of those jerseys since Telecom back in 1997. If a team goes after the green and after the yellow, can they be successful?
You know, like you said, you have to go all the way back to 1997, and I think even then, Eric Zabel was doing a lot of that stuff freelance. He didn't have a train, so to speak, so he was kind of just winging that somewhat. A lot of their resources were toward Jan Ullrich, so I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of the same thing. We're going to see Cavendish having to freelance. A lot of the resources are going to be toward the yellow jersey and toward Wiggins. You know, what they're trying to do, they really need about a 12-person team, and unfortunately they have a 9-man limit here, so it's going to be tough.
I think that if you go for both jerseys, both the yellow jersey and the green jersey, you won't win either. You have to dedicate your team. In modern cycling these days, 1997 is a long time ago. Eric Zabel was a very special bike racer, maybe a little bit more versatile than Mark Cavendish. If you go for both the green and the yellow, you won't win either.
It's a bit of a juggling act, not to mention that you also have the Olympics coming up later in the summer, and we've heard Mark Cavendish say that he's really, the color he's going for anyway is gold. He'd like to win Olympic gold. It is stage number 2 of the Tour de France. Let's take a live look right now at stage number 2 as we roll through Belgium. Guys, we expected a breakaway, about 7, closer to 8 minutes at this point. How long do they hang on?
Well, Fabian Cancellara was very vocal in criticizing the sprinters teams for not chasing the breakaway. I don't think that that's going to happen today. Right when they turn on the gas in the peloton, that advantage will tumble down. Christophe Kern, Anthony Roux, Michael Morhoff, 2 Frenchmen out of 3. That's not a surprise. Those are the proportions we'll probably see throughout the Tour de France. About 2 French people for every other rider from a different country.
So the breakaway is now actually 6.5 out. Markov in the polka dot jersey, given that we have a flat stage, is the nice thing for him that he's going to be able to hang on to that, Scott?
You know, he may have kind of overextended himself a little bit today with only 1 point up the road. I'm not really sure that would have been a great move, but he's up there. You know, one of the hardest things to do is get into a breakaway in the Tour de France. So once he's there, you know, it's some good TV time. They've got a new sponsor in Tinkoff Bank. So, you know, this is kind of a win-win for him, but I think a week from now he may be regretting this move.
It doesn't hurt to get FaceTime. It never hurts to get your jersey on air. Join us again tomorrow. Excuse me. That's not the right promo. Let me read the right one here. Well, you can watch Tour live online. The online pass, just $29.99. Our mobile app is sold separately. The big thing that you have to know is it's available simply by logging on to NBCSports.com. Phil Liggett, Paul Sherwin. They will have the live call of stage number 2 of the Tour de France coming up after this.
Today, the Tour de France leaves just north of Liège, where this race started 3 days ago. From Visé, as we head now towards Tournai in Belgium, we trace the French borders now, and tomorrow we will cross them as we race on into France. That's where we're commentating from. The Tour de France is a sprinter's delight today. Just a little matter. They've got to pick up 3 riders out in front first. Well, Paul, we expect to see Radio Shack protecting the rights for Fabian Cancellara, looking for a week in the leader's yellow jersey. That breakaway, though, took a while to get away today.
Took an awful long time, around about 22 kilometres or 13 miles of racing before the 3-man breakaway established itself. Once it got to 8 minutes, all of a sudden alarm bells rang, and we've seen a lot of the teams of the sprinters criticised yesterday by Fabian Cancellara by not coming up to the front and sharing some of the pacemaking, actually doing the pacemaking. Team Lotto thinking about Andre Greipel, Team Orica Green Edge thinking, of course, about Matty Goss.
Well, as they ride along here, just keep the tempo steady. The gap has been up and down. It's been out to 8 minutes at 31 miles into the race. It's come back a little bit now to just under 6.5 minutes. There's been no dramas, but you may have seen yesterday when Tony Martin crashed very early on. Well, he's riding with a plaster over a broken scaphoid today, but he wants to continue the Tour de France. It is a sprinter's delight. It's basically flat. We're not very much above sea level all day. We do have the 4th category climb, which is the Citadel in the city of Namur in Belgium, which, interestingly, Paul, very first foreign city I ever visited on my bike back in 1961.
It is a beautiful citadel. Well, the yellow part on the left-hand side is the part of the course that we have covered. The blue part is what is left to go, and that's 133 kilometres at the moment, which is around about 85 miles.
These are the three leaders, and it was started by Anthony Roux, who got away 13 miles in, then a long chase. Morkov here, Michael Morkov, the Dane, he got across, and he wears the polka dot jersey. It's his first Tour de France. He's 27 years of age, but he's now chatting with his teammate here. Their team manager, rather. Well, I don't think I can't hear anything. Maybe you could at home, but anyway, his ambition is to try and retain his lead for another day in the King of the Mountains. So expect to see him in action very shortly at the Citadel in Namur.
Well, let me do the translation there, Phil, because obviously it was in Danish and it came across quite easily. Now, in fact, team managers was probably telling him, look, you know, you're 6.5 minutes clear. Just around the corner is the Citadel d'Amur, the big climb of the day. You've got the most points in the race so far. Just make sure that you get the points over the top of this climb. And you can keep that jersey for a few more days to come. Although tomorrow there are 5 climbs in the last 18 miles of the race.
There are, and I'd add on to that sentence, Paul, and after you win your point, drop back to the pack because you're wasting your time staying up front today. That would be the common sense thing to do because, as Scott Moninger has said, in fact, it's only his first Tour de France. He was in the lead for 188 kilometres yesterday, which is nearly 120 miles. If he's thinking of doing that again today, he isn't going to finish the Tour.
That's a very good point, Phil. You have to be very, very careful. This is a flat tyre here. This is a replay looking back, and this is what happens. If you don't panic, you get a very quick wheel change. Just having a look here, this looks like number 43, and that, of course, should be Danilo Hondo, who is a former German national champion, and the lead-out man for Alessandro Petacchi. He'll wait for the team car to come up behind him, and then he should be able to change that wheel in around about 15 to 20 seconds.
Which he did. He's back in the field now, but Alessandro Petacchi, who he's hoping to lead out today, has said he's up for the race today to the finishing line. He wants to win a stage. So don't they all, the sprinters? So we're going to see a terrific finish today. There's no doubt about that when we get down to the finish here in Tournai.
Just to finish your thought there, Phil, you're very right about the Tour de France. I was once told by a former British professional cyclist, Barry Hoban, who was a very good sprinter, won 8 stages of the Tour de France. When you make an effort in the Tour de France, it has to be for a reason. It has to be to win something, and that is why Michael Morkov needs to be very careful how he uses that energy, because you've got a bank account of energy, and if you use too much, you don't get into the last week of the Tour.
That's right. You can't leave a deposit in the bank account when it's a matter of energy, can you? Get it back later. That's the trouble. Well, we're going to follow the Escaut River today, a lot today, as we course our way down towards the finish. We're going in a generally due westerly direction all of the way away from Liège. As I say, we're into Namur now. The Citadel, which sits here right in the middle of Namur, is often the scene of famous bike races. It's a nasty little climb in the centre of town.
There we little caption at the bottom there, by the way. The polka dot jersey is put up there because he's with the leading group of riders. Look at the stick of the jerseys at the bottom. Shows you the green jersey, the white jersey, and the yellow jersey are all in the main field. They're at 6 minutes and 22 seconds behind. For the moment, I don't feel that that's really important. It's what's going to happen when we come down to the fast finish, because the sprinters, the gladiators of the route, want to have their day.
Well, at the moment, they've allowed them to run. They're not concerned, the main field, just now, and that's why we're seeing Chris Horner's back here now. Had a little problem yesterday. He complained about an injury to his knee yesterday. Kept dropping back to talk with his team car. He lost time in the end. He lost almost a minute on the run-up to the finish, which is not good for a man who wants a podium in Paris. He's now back to have a treatment here off the race doctor.
Already a lot of injured riders. You've already mentioned Tony Martin, Phil, but I've also seen in the early part of the coverage before it actually came up, I saw that Luis Leon Sanchez has also got a plastic splint on his wrist as well. It would not happen in any other bike race in the world. If you had a slight injury, you'd say, right, I'm calling it a day. I'm going to have an early shower and go home. But this is the Tour de France. Every bike rider who starts this race wants to try and get himself to the finish in Paris.
Well, we don't like to see Chris Horner at the doctor's car there because it brings back memories of a year ago. And we can have a look at the crash. He was involved in this massive pile-up down there on the road. And Chris did battle through to the finish, but sadly was taken away to hospital. Here he is being put on the stretcher. He was making nonsense when he was talking here. He was saying, did I finish? What did I finish? Is it over? Where am I going, etc. Now, what's happening? We're going live again because Mark Cavendish, the world champion, is stopping to change bikes by the look of it.
Again, no problem at all. No panic on board the Sky Express here this afternoon. This obviously was discussed with the team management, and he's just changed his bike. Probably a slight problem, a sign of the fact that this man is extremely nervous. He wants to have everything right before he gets to the finish line today. He's the big #1 favourite for the majority of people, but the fact is, how will he be able to sprint without the train that has taken him to 20 individual stage victories in the Tour de France when he was on board HTC previously?
And that really is the question, and we're very anxious to see the answers. He comes up to the finish today. There's the wind. Head to cross at the moment. It'll stay basically in the same direction all day. It's not gale force, but they'll make their own circulation of air down there as they race at speeds up to about 30 miles an hour. They've had a slow start today. They've only covered 24 miles in the first hour of racing, so it hasn't exactly been a ripping of the legs today.
Yeah, but you see, today, Phil, compared with yesterday, there are different numbers of teams coming to the front. Lotto Belisov for Andre Greipel. Argus Shimano in the white jersey. They're thinking of them, and Marcel Kittel. A little bit further back, there's an Orica Green Edge rider in second position. He's thinking about Matthew Goss. It's a different technique today because these guys realise today is a pure sprinter's finish, and they won't want to let these guys get away.
Here we are into Namur. We're looking for the Citadel. It is a climb of 2 kilometres, about 1.2 miles. And there's only 1 point for the King of the Mountains competition, and the man who's made the effort to be in the break to get that point is the leader of the competition. On the right, number 175, Michael Morkov.
And I tell you what, he's got the most points in the race so far. Only 3 points. It's amazing to think that that's all he's got. He's got Peter Sagan with 1 point, and it looks to me as if the rider in the front here, Anthony Roux's got a little bit of a problem because he's holding his hand off the handlebars. This is the scene, by the way, if you are a film buff, of a very interesting film called The Vélo de Ghislain Lambert. It's about a Belgian cyclist who actually started off as a guy working in a factory and dreamed about becoming a professional cyclist, and he raced up this climb. It's a good film if you get a chance to watch it, but the French is rather difficult.
Well, this is the infamous climb. It is on cobblestones occasionally, as you can see. Many famous bike races finish up here. Clearly, at the moment, there is something wrong here. I don't know whether he fell off, Anthony Roux. He's not happy at all here.
Well, you can see he's actually got a bandage on his left hand there. The two fingers are actually bandaged together, so it's obviously getting rattled because of the cobblestone and the rough nature of this climb here. The Citadel at the top, by the way, Phil, goes down to around about 2,000 years of age. We can see here Cavendish getting back onto the tail of the peloton, having a quick chat with his teammate. Now, we've got to be careful now because that is Bernie Eisel, but he was wearing number 104, but we had a bit of fun on the first day because they all had the wrong numbers on.
They did. They put the wrong numbers on, and they've sorted it out now. This is the Citadel itself here. These are the riders. It's interesting that Roux is continuing. The reason he doesn't want his hand on that handlebar is because of the rattling it's getting off the cobblestones, and obviously it's very painful, and it must be from an earlier crash here. He's the most experienced as far as being a pro in the breakaway goes. He's 25, 5th year to pro. It's his 3rd Tour de France. And last year he was second in the French Road Race Championships. He's an accomplished rider.
Yeah, before we get to the sprint point, I just have to tell you that this Citadel at the top here was fortified in 908. It's been besieged by many of the leading figures of Europe between the 15th and the 19th century. It has been the headquarters for a Dutch garrison. It's been the barracks for the Belgian army. But later on in 1891, it was transformed into a massive natural park. But that's not what Michael Morkov's thinking about. He's thinking about the line at the top because another 1 point in the bag for him. And I don't think any of these riders will actually challenge him because he is a man who comes from a great track background. A silver medal in Beijing in the team pursuit, a world championship a couple of years ago in the team pursuit and the Madison. He is a top track rider, and he will know exactly how he wants to sprint this one out, even if it's only for a single point. That could be important for him and his team.
Well, the two Frenchmen I don't think is going to spoil the Danish party here, surely. There's only the winner counts. It's 1 point. It's not going to give him the King of the Mountains title over 3 weeks, but it's going to keep him in Polka Dot as they come up towards the summit. I think they will allow the Danish rider to take this. The other rider in the breakaway, by the way, Christoph Kern in the green jersey there. Well, just 2 hours before he went on stage in Liège for the team prize presentation last Thursday, his wife gave birth to their first son, Tom, and so he's in the breakaway, and he's rather hoping this breakaway does succeed.
Well, in fact, Phil, he was given permission to be away from the presentation because he was actually at the birth, which was on the day of the presentation, and he flew straight up to the start of the Tour de France after that. I can confirm that Roux was involved in an accident yesterday, and that's why those two fingers are bandaged together, and it's because of the rough nature of the Citadel de Namur that he's actually feeling those vibrations come through his hand. He'll be all right once he gets over the top.
Well, it's certainly a hard way to climb a hill in the Tour de France, that's for sure. The gap at 6:19 at the moment. It's been up to exactly 8 minutes, and it's hovering now. It's been holding around 6.5 minutes for quite some way. Michael Morkov here has certainly made an impression on this year's Tour de France. He's been a professional for 8 years, but all of his victories have come on the track. Now he's a full-time road racing cyclist.
No, he certainly is, and he's a good rider, as we've seen over the past, and he's looked for this breakaway. It's so important in the first few days of the Tour de France to try and get a bit of glory for the team, because once you've got some publicity, the team then feels as if they've paid back the sponsors, and they can have a little bit more relaxed approach to the rest of the Tour.
Just look at the crowd here on the zigzagging climb up to the Citadel, which has a keeper on the top and an arboretum for all of the greenery up there as well. It really is a beautiful part of Namur in Belgium as they continue to go round the cobbled roads here, twisting and turning, corkscrewing their way up to the summit. Morkov is doing all of the work, and I presume he's not expecting the French to come around him before he crosses over the summit and gets the 1 point, and they didn't. Well done. So Morkov now, if you've got any sense, Michael, you'll now stop racing and go and wait for the bunch.
Well, that would be the idea, but when you've got 6.5 minutes advantage, I'm not sure the team management will allow that to happen, as the main field now are also about to start the climb of the Citadel.
So the peloton, well, they're just on the outskirts of Namur here as they start to cross the town, so they're quite a little way behind. They're heading down the side of the river at the moment. No big rush here amongst them at all. There's the situation now in the mountains competition. As Paul Sherman has said, big day tomorrow with a lot of small hills coming before the finish in the last quarter of the stage. So it's going to be an interesting race. Our first full day of racing in France tomorrow as we race to Boulogne-sur-Mer. The 2012 Tour de France on the NBC Sports Network is presented by Michelob Ultra, the superior light beer, perfectly balanced for the ultra life. By Competitive Cyclist, get 20% off cycling apparel. So we're looking at the peloton now as they climb up the Citadel in Namur, and they are running at just over 6 minutes behind the three leaders. The climb's been won by Michael Morkov, who extends his lead by a single point in the King of the Mountains competition.
Yeah, you can see the main field there. They're taking it easy over this climber. They're pretty happy with the fact that I think today a lot of the teams, the sprinters, are sharing the pacemaking at the front end of the main field. Right in the middle there, bobbing his shoulders in the black shoulders, you can see there is Jens Voigt, and not too far away from him, the yellow jersey, Fabian Cancellara.
Well, one thing's for certain now, Andre Greipel on the Lotto team has put a rider up on the front to set tempo. That's the indication. He is looking for the sprint victory today. Sat here at the back is Luis Leon Sanchez. We left him on the road, a nasty crash yesterday, and it looks as though he's got a problem on his left side of his hand there, Paul.
Yeah, he's riding with this little splint there as well as Tony Martin here this afternoon. The Citadel of Namur, Vauban 1692, and that refers to the designer of the Citadel. It was built in 1692, and today, of course, the Tour de France goes by in 2012.
Yes, well, even the Tour de France didn't exist in 1692. It all began in 1903. The Belgian flags indicating the wind. We're riding virtually due west all day today. Luis Leon Sanchez, a popular bike rider, and was unlucky to crash yesterday, and he looks like he's suffering today. He's just hanging on to the tail of the peloton with that left hand strapped up. And as Paul has said, Tony Martin also apparently has broken his scaphoid in his left hand, and he has a plastic cast on his hand because he wants to at least make the first time trial. He is the time trial world champion.
Yeah, that's a nasty little bone, Phil, just on the inside of the wrist, and it gets broken quite a lot when athletes go down, cyclists especially, because you land on your hands and it just pops that thing. It doesn't actually restrict the ability to move your hand that much, but it is extremely painful as an injury.
Yeah, most certainly is. The peloton, though, still no pressure on. In fact, the time slipping out just a little bit at the moment. Going up the cobble climb of the Citadel. Our computer's showing 6 minutes 11 seconds, which is about right at the moment.
Yep, they're pretty much over the top of the climb now. That's been sorted out. And fortunately enough, in the advert break, Phil, I was able to get the phone on and had a quick call back to Team Sky. And we saw a little while back that Mark Cavendish stopped at the side of the road. And there was no panic on board. Where he is, wearing number 103 in his World Championship jersey. He's not panicking at all. He's waiting for the team car to come up alongside him. He's discussing the problem with them. And as we saw the car stop, he left one bike at the side of the road and took over the brand new bike and decided to clear off on that. Well, I got on the phone to Sean Yates, who is the team manager of Team Sky, and he's actually in the car, and he told me the reason for the bike change was that Cavendish's saddle was slipping down. So what it was doing was, in fact, lowering his position on the machine. And it's not been a great day for Mark Cavendish, because earlier on in the stage he actually had to change his shoes as well. But that to me is the sign of a man who's nervous, and he wants to make sure that everything is absolutely perfect to try and come out and get himself the stage victory at the end of the day.
Talking of shoes, there reminds me of a funny story, though it wasn't probably funny for Greg LeMond a few years ago when he rode the Tour of Italy, the great American three-time winner of the Tour de France. Arrived very, very wet. His shoes were soaking wet, and the landlady of the hotel thought she would dry his shoes in the oven. And of course she cooked them, and they had to get a cobbler out of bed and make him new shoes during the night because she'd literally cooked his shoes.
Well, those were the days, Phil, when the shoes were completely made of leather, and when they got very wet at the end of the day, they ended up being like a pair of slippers rather than a pair of shoes.
Yes, and Greg LeMond was very, very particular about his shoes. They were always handmade to suit his feet. Anyway, wandering around the centre of Namur here, at the Citadel itself and the centre of the chateau here.
That's actually the belfry of Namur. It was built in 1388, and it was originally part of the city walls. And the tower became a belfry in 1746. When we get to the finish line, by the way, the belfry, or the clock tower in Tournai, the finish line here, is the oldest one in Belgium.
It's referred to as the onion-shaped dome, quite obviously, for obvious reasons there. These are the leaders now on today's stage of the Tour de France. They got away and came together at round about 15 miles into the stage. The first attacker was Anthony Roux. The other two joined him. The target has been achieved by Michael Morkov. With a lead of 6 minutes, he's just riding with these riders, but really he's got to be careful. He had a long breakaway of 120 miles in the lead yesterday, and he finished 4 minutes behind the race at the end. So he mustn't have tired himself out, that is for sure. So as they continue, now is your chance to build your very own elite cycling team for the most epic race of the year. It's the Discover Card Fantasy Cycling Challenge. Just go to the NBCSports.com/challenge to register now. And after yesterday, let's have a look at the USA-American standings here. TJ Van Garderen held on to 4th place and the white jersey. Van der Velde is in excellent shape in 15th. Tommy Danielson, but not big time gaps here. They're right in the mix. Levi Leipheimer did lose 17 seconds on the finish yesterday, which is not good. And Chris Horner lost himself 55 seconds as well on the climb up to the finish. George Hincapie rides as strong as ever. Tyler Farrar is in there. He's not looking to win the Tour overall. He is looking to win a stage, of course. And Dave Zabriskie there completes the Americans. He's riding in 167th place. Well, Tyler Farrar, is he going to win today? Well, let's find out, because Tyler Farrar was talking with Craig Hummer before the start.
Tyler, last year when you won Stage 3, you dedicated it to Wouter. Today's stage finishes in the last place that he ever won a race. How much do connections like that inspire and motivate you?
It's always, something special, I guess. I actually didn't know that until this morning, that this was the finish in Tournai was the last place he won. So it's an interesting coincidence, I guess.
In terms of today's course, everyone says this is the first day for the real sprinters to come out. It's the usual cast of characters with you, Cav, Andre Greipel, but now there are some new men in the mix, men who have been leadouts for those guys in the past. In your head and on this team, what skill set do you have that makes you know you can beat them?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of good guys here in the Tour this year. The sprinting field is pretty deep. So, you know, I mean, I've done it before. I know that when I'm on, I'm capable of winning. So it's just a question of putting it together and having a bit of luck.
You're one of the more mellow sprinters of the field, but for a sprinter in general, confidence should never be a problem, should it?
Yeah, I guess not. I don't know. I mean, I think everyone has their own approach to how they like to ride the race and how they like to, you know, approach it, but whatever works for them.
All right, good luck today.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, the team that Tyler rides on is the Garmin Sharp team, which won the team prize in the Tour de France last year. And the riders who look to help him today, Robbie Hunter, the South African, who's 35. He is charged with leading out Tyler Farrar towards the finish today. He replaces the New Zealand rider, Julian Dean. Other riders you can expect some help from, too. At the bottom, you've got Dave Zabriskie, who can really lift it up a notch to get them up to speed before that sprint finish. And what an incentive, too. For Tyler, who lost his best friend Wouter Valens in the Tour of Italy last year. There is the defending champion, Cadel Evans, who's very pleased with his ride so far. Something of a psychological coup, I think, yesterday, Paul, for Cadel Evans. He was well looked after by TJ Van Garderen on the ride at the Citadel. Bradley Wiggins was a bit isolated from his team, and I'm sure it didn't go unnoticed.
No, I would have to agree with you. Cadel Evans, let's not forget, we've covered almost half of the race so far. We're just about to come to the feeding station. Nice little pair of knife and forks for the riders to pick up a few snacks as they go through there, with one sprint point still left to go at 153 kilometers, almost 100 miles into the race. And again, it will be interesting to see which of the sprinters actually have a go for that sprint point, because that counts for the green jersey points classification.
It does, and wearing the green jersey is the man who won yesterday, Peter Sagan. It's not his yet. It's still owned by Fabian Cancellara, who finished in the leaders with the leaders again yesterday. But I suspect, as they're racing for, at the moment, 4th place at the sprint point, with the most of the sprint points are 20 go to the winner out in the breakaway, I think we might see people like Sagan go for that sprint point. Eddie Merckx, by the way, told Peter Sagan yesterday at the finish, he said, you can win the green jersey this year.
Well, I tell you what, Phil, some of the figures that were coming through on Peter Sagan's performance yesterday are quite remarkable. To get himself across to Fabian Cancellara, he had a cadence of 120 revolutions a minute.
And that's uphill.
Uphill. The last 2 minutes 20 of the record, his average wattage was 493 watts, but he peaked at 1,200 watts. Now, that's a lot of light bulbs.
Well, we could have fired up all the lighting in the village of Serang yesterday at that sort of output. Well, he is a powerful boy, even if he is only 22 years of age. If you put a tape measure around those thighs of his, you make sure you've taken a long tape measure with you.
Well, actually, I discussed those figures with a friend of mine. He said, well, thank goodness, because Slovakia, at least they've got a bit of power back up for their grid if it goes down.
These are the 3 men establishing an early lead today. Not quite as early as normal, because the bunch refused to allow anybody away in the first half hour of racing, but then they did get away. Anthony Roux breaking it first, and Morkov catching him up quickly with Christoph Kern. Morkov's job done today. There's no more climbs on the roads. We rejoin the peloton. Radio Shack's Jens Voigt here. Always a willing workhorse at this stage, but note the different coloured jerseys now. Every team that has a sprinter in this race has put a man in the work rate at the front.
And it could all be extremely important when you come down to the end, because all of the sprinters need to have a pilot fisher. Mark Cavendish, though, pretty much, apart from Bernie Eisel, is pretty much on his own. I know that Andre Greipel is going to count on the Kiwi rider Greg Henderson when it comes down to the end, but we were talking a little earlier on to the riders from Team Saxo Bank, and they reckon that the Australian sprinter Jonathan Cantwell is going to be the leader for the first Argentinian ever to ride the Tour de France, JJ Haedo.
And both first-timers in the Tour de France, Cantwell and JJ. This is now the feeding station where they will hunt for those small bags. We call them musettes, full of the goodies of the day, and if they're feeling peckish, they will snatch those bags on the run, rather like they used to catch the old mail bags in the days of midnight expresses on the railroad. Well, there's the peloton. There's some way behind. At the moment, they're about 3.5 kilometres behind, which is about, what, 2 miles or so behind those 3 leaders.
Yeah, we're looking at approximately 75 miles to go to the finish. The thing is, Phil, the gap now is starting to come down quite dramatically. It tipped up at maximum point at 25 miles or 42 kilometers into the race. It was 8 minutes the advantage. Then the teams of the sprinters started to take an interest in making sure the gap didn't get out too far, and that's why it's been pegged, and it's slowly starting to come down.
Yes, it reached its peak at 31 miles in today when they topped at 8 minutes. Now, there's one on the right. No, you saw the chap on the right. They're always the feeders, the people that feed, wear the team jerseys, so the riders can pick them out quickly. There is Andre Greipel. Paul, he's smiling at the moment. He'll be serious later on.
Well, he will be smiling at the moment. He's a great character, Andre Greipel. He's won an awful lot of races so far this season. You know, he started his campaign off very early on in the Santos Down Under. That's how it's done.
Yes, very skillful. It's easy for these three. They haven't got to worry about it. Morkov here has got more problems trying to lasso himself. But, you know, in the peloton, it is a very dangerous practice indeed.
It is one of the most dangerous parts of the stage, and that's why it's very important to choose the position that your team helpers would like to be during the feeding station. Some teams always make sure they're at the beginning. Other teams like to be right down towards the end.
Well, yesterday, Peter Sagan joined Andre Greipel on 14 wins for the season, and they could well go head-to-head today in the finishing sprint to give the outright leader of the race's win totals. As the peloton now, they're heading up towards the feed now, as it's going to be a little bit dangerous for the peloton. A stage of over 200 kilometres, which this is, 129 miles in total. They really do need that food on board. That is, of course, if you like what's in the bag, and I'm not sure that Michael Morkov does.
Shall I? Yes. Nah, I don't want that to say. But don't worry. This is not. Don't worry too much. Don't worry too much about this stuff that's being thrown away, because all of that will be picked up and taken away as great souvenirs, because there's always a mass of spectators right after the feeding zone. What you have to bear in mind, Phil, is that the team helpers at night, they make a bag for everybody, so they put as much as they can, and it's a question of choice.
That's absolutely right. The Tour de France itself will sweep up anything that's left behind as well behind the race. So there's no littering of the roads of France here. Now it's time for a change of jersey here, is it?
That's Marcel Zeeberg on the far side, but everybody seems to be enjoying the sunshine here this afternoon. On the inside, it's Marcus Burkhardt. He's well known. I'm not quite sure what the problem is here. A lot of the riders very often in the early part of the stage, they may well... Yeah, he's getting rid of the radio, probably fed up with the FM radio that's coming in. The tunes may not be to his liking here this afternoon. But a lot of riders start with an undervest on, and it started off very cool this morning. And now as we start to get into the summery part of Belgium, it may well be that they're overheating and getting themselves stripped down and ready for a fast finish.
Well, it is beautiful today, especially at the finishing line, but the forecast is rather wet by the finish, 75%. But let's hope that the forecasters are not right on this occasion. The peloton is shrinking down. They're getting closer. It's now approaching the 5-minute mark. They might well decide to catch them earlier today, and then we'll have a real race towards the finishing line. The London Olympics are coming to the NBC and the NBC Sports Network. Coverage begins July 25th on the NBC Sports Network, leading up to the opening ceremonies, July 27th on NBC. And tonight, you can watch the US Olympic Trials finals swimming with the women's 50-metre free and the men's 1,500 metres free. That's 8 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Back with the afternoon stage race here, or the morning across America, of the Tour de France. So we're looking now at Tony Martin here, and this is the plastic cast which was fitted on his hand overnight after that crash earlier. We're picking him out in the peloton about 5 minutes ago, this was, as Martin now freewheels along. And this is the World Time Trial champion, and he says he does not want to give up the Tour de France. This is very special for him this year. So he's hoping to stay out for the time trial. Now, I think we can update you with a little bit more of that by joining Craig Hummer.
I spoke with Alessandro Tenni, the press agent for Omega Pharma Quick Step this morning here at the bus. He told me that Tony's crash yesterday was one just like a lot that happened during the Tour de France. Tony was right on the wheel of the man in front of him. That person in front hit a pothole. Tony had no time to brake and avoid the collision. Therefore, both riders went down. He knew instantly there was pain in the wrist, and we all know the rest of the story. But speaking with Tony here at the bus this morning, after being told that he was in a good mood because he was going to get a chance to start the race, his face was not one of someone that was looking forward to a day on the bike. In fact, as he rode off to go down to sign-in, you could tell that the customized cast was going to put that left wrist into a very different position. Only time will tell if he will be able to continue on through not just today's stage, but the rest of the Tour.
Thanks, Craig. Well, let's hope he can. Certainly in the past, riders like Raymond Poulidor have accomplished such a feat and gone all the way to Paris and, in fact, got a podium place with a broken wrist such as that. So let's hope Tony can do the same. As we see the three leaders still out front here. Well, the riders sharing the workload at the front, with the exception of Michael Morkov. I think he's making a little bit of sense of that, Paul. He's putting in about 80% effort. The rest are putting in near 50. I think that makes sense for this rider here. He must be feeling tired. If I was him, I would slow down and go back.
There's only one reason for not doing it, Phil. They've got a 5.5-minute advantage, and he always will bear in mind that there could be a mistake in the main field, although with all of the sprinters knowing that this is one of 6 chances in the Tour de France to get a stage victory, I don't think that breakaway is going to survive this afternoon, but Morkov will stay there just in case there's a problem.
Well, we're still a fair way. We're over 30 miles from the sprint point along the road, as we just having a tour through the injuries in the peloton, because this is Luis Leon Sanchez. He's also got a wrist guard on his left wrist because he was left on the road yesterday as well.
Well, there's nobody given the official injury, and the race route, the race book last night, it actually said just a contusion to the left wrist. But for example, Tony Martin, we didn't learn about his broken scaphoid until this morning, because although he was looked after by the race doctors during the race yesterday, it wasn't until last night that he actually, because of the pain, the team decided to take him to hospital, and he had an x-ray which revealed that injury.
Yes, and in fact, the medical report for Sanchez said he had a problem with the right side, and that was clearly on the left side, so that wasn't quite right. But back to the car. Now, the words of advice from the Saxo Bank team car here, telling him the situation. He looks cool about it. Michael Morkov, earlier today, he got the 1 point available in the King of the Mountains. He keeps his lead tomorrow. A lot more climbs on the road to Boulogne tomorrow. It's quite a hilly area, believe it or not, on the edge there of the Channel coastline. Christoph Kern. He's riding through here nicely. His wife gave birth to Tom a couple of days ago, first child.
Team manager in the team car for Team Saxo Bank, Dan Frost, a former very good track rider, and he will be happy because for a team, Phil, if you get just one of the jerseys in the first week of the Tour de France, it gives the team an awful lot of publicity. Not only is it different to the normal jersey that the riders would wear during the course of the event, it's something that gets picked up by the television cameras very easy. Whether it's the polka dot jersey, the yellow jersey, the green jersey, or the white jersey, it attracts attention, and that's what sponsorship is all about.
Absolutely. Through the plane trees now, blue skies above, but the official weather forecast is they've got a 75% chance of rain before the riders get to the finish, where local time will be around 5:30 in the afternoon. But at the moment, things are looking good and pretty routine. But I think the way they're racing, Paul, they're looking to bring this breakaway back before we get to that sprint point along the route. All of the teams have put men up front here now to limit the escape because they want it to be a day for the sprinters. And who are we to argue with them? Because this is the Tour de France. Oh, there's been a crash on the road here. And so Rabobank down on the right. This was at the back of the peloton.
There's another crash gone down now, Phil.
My goodness.
Everyone's getting very nervous because we're getting that little bit closer to the finish.
Well, as you rejoin us live on the Tour de France, those were the crashes yesterday in the last few kilometres of the race, just when we thought we were going to have a trouble-free day. These opening days highlighted on the Tour de France with these crashes. It is a dangerous moment for all cyclists. A massive peloton, everybody getting to know each other for 3 weeks of racing. And if you recall last year, well, boy, we had a week of crashes day after day. Take a look at this.
That
was a massive pile-up.
A number of riders going down like a deck of cards.
There's another crash here. Just looking here at the chaos.
They were bigger. I don't say there was more. There's always a lot of crashes in the first week of the Tour de France, but certainly I believe they were bigger.
A television car comes through like that and hits Fletcher. He can't believe it. But watch behind, because Hugeland goes into a barbed wire fence.
He hit Fletcher and I was flying, and the 2 seconds I could think was, oh, I'm still alive.
I think at the end of the 2011 Tour de France, I crashed 5 times. None of all of them were horrific or anything like that, but they add up, and every time you hit the ground, you hit the ground.
And it seems like there's always been bad crashes in the first week.
And a massive pile up behind. I've never seen a crash like that before.
One is nervous the first few days. Position fight, sprinters fighting, leaders from the team are fighting.
This is a nasty crash down here.
The danger came from smaller roads, tailwind, and rain.
Oh, I knew there would be one.
The roads are so small. I mean, there is no place for you to go. Normally, we can go off into the field, avoid some crashes, but in that area of France where it started last year, there's a 3 to 6 foot ditch on one side, and there's a hillside on the other. Last year, the only place to go was the pile that was in front of you.
Teams that kept their whole teams at the front, those are the ones who didn't crash. And it was kind of like, it was kind of like screw your buddy kind of racing. It's getting more and more cutthroat every year, and the speeds are getting faster, and the respect is getting less.
Yes, it certainly was a black opening week to the Tour de France, and these riders were all involved. Bradley Wiggins broke his collarbone on stage 7. Tom Bonen had concussion. Chris Horner, we saw with concussion, broke his nose on the 8th day. Jurgen van den Broek, he was out on the 9th day. Dave Zabriskie broke his wrist on the 9th day. Fractured femur for Alexander Vinokurov, who incidentally is riding this year's Tour de France, and a lower back injury for Andreas Kloden. 30 of 198 riders abandoned because of crashes. Now to the present day, and moments ago, as we left Namur, we saw this man holding his left wrist out because he really is in extreme pain, Anthony Roux. He's still in the breakaway, as we'll find out very shortly, but he cannot put any pressure on that left wrist whatsoever. He was involved in the falls yesterday. Let's hope we don't see too many in this opening 7 days. Here we are now back with the leaders as we go live again, and that is Anthony Roux himself on the front. So as they continue, the gap now, Paul, nobody affecting the destiny of the overall lead of this race, although currently Christoph Kern in the breakaway is the virtual leader of the Tour. The gap is now just on 5 minutes.
Yeah, but looking at the speed in the main peloton, Phil, they're taking this very, very seriously indeed, as they got a mixture of different teams coming to the front end of the peloton, sharing the pacemaking. It's almost as if you've got a very big organisation between the teams. If we were to stop the race right now, and we will not, Christopher Kern would be the leader of this race by 2 minutes ahead of Michael Morkov and 2 minutes and 7 seconds ahead of Anthony Roux. And Fabian Cancellara will be in 4th place at 2:59. That's the virtual standings in the yellow jersey. I don't think that'll be the standings at the end of the day, because I've still got my money on Fabian Cancellara.
Yeah, those calculations, Paul, are just to keep the computer happy, because he gets confused occasionally. But inside the 100 kilometres now, less than 60 miles to race to the finish. The gap is inside 5 minutes as well. The peloton are getting on with their job of slowly winding the fish back to the pack. We do have this sprint in Soigny, which is still a little way down the road. It comes about 31 miles, 50 kilometres from the finish. So we're approximately 50 kilometres from that sprint. I have a feeling the sprinters want those green jersey points today, and so we should see those 3 reeled in earlier than normal.
Yeah, well, as I was saying, Phil, there's a lot of points available for that green jersey point competition. Sprint at Soigny, 20 points for the first riders across the line, and points for the first 15 riders. It's almost like a mini finish line, if you like.
All the sprinters have got men working steadily on the front now. Just looking here, the team on Lotto rider there. He's looking for Andre Greipel. The Orica Green Edge are looking for Matthew Goss today. The white jersey 3rd in line is the Argus team. They are looking for Marcel Kittel, the German sprinter. There's a lot of boys here can win this race if we all get together. On the NBC Sports Network. Looking down on one of the beautiful chateaus which abound in this region. This is the Chateau de Corroy, and it looks to be in perfect condition. So as we look now at the peloton here, they really are beginning to step on the gas now. The gap is at 5:03. And all of the teams who have visions of winning today with their sprinter have now put men into the chase at the front of the race. And that's to be expected, I think, right now. As once again, we pass through yet another chateau here, one of the abbeys, the Abbey of Visé, which was first built in 1146.
Yeah, but this old abbey that we're looking at here, Phil, was completely rebuilt, in fact, in the 13th century. And in its heyday, the abbots with high function from the Cistercian order lived here. About 100 monks lived here and 300 laypersons to look after them. It stood in those days in 10,000 hectares of land, and to convert that into old money, that's 25,000 acres.
Yes, and it's home to the strict observance, too, of the Trappist monk here. And they wear white tunics and black scapula with a leather belt worn over that tunic. But I think the roof's in need of renovation.
Well, it was renovated in the 13th century, so it lasted for quite some time.
Well, there we are, the man in green on loan from Fabian Cancellara, the man who won yesterday, Peter Sagan, and taking on food today. The quiet man, he's smiling at the moment. And he really is always let his legs do the talking. He does speak pretty good English, but he's working so hard on his Italian these days that he doesn't actually, he's losing his English a little bit. But this is the man of the moment. The big intrigue in this year's Tour de France. It's his first one. He's now won 14 races. The first chance he got to win was yesterday, and he won. And he also collected on his final preparation race 4 stage wins, including a time trial on the 2012 Tour de Suisse.
I think the important thing for Peter Sagan now, though, Phil, is he will come up against some of the biggest, fastest sprinters in the world. And he gets a chance now, at 22 years of age only, to measure himself against the likes of Tyler Farrar from the United States, of course, Mark Cavendish from Great Britain, and Andre Greipel. We saw him sprint from any which way he wanted to in the Amgen Tour of California, whether it was from the front, from the back, whether he was boxed in, and he was almost, well, he was untouchable.
Well, we're just watching each sprinter put a man up front as well. I note that Sky are also showing in the yellow crash helmets further down the line, showing willing, because their man is Mark Cavendish today for the sprint finish, if it happens for him. And it's a little bit of a diversion for the Sky team, who are concentrating all of their efforts on Bradley Wiggins becoming the first British winner overall the Tour de France. Adam Hansen of Australia just passing through camera there.
Well, again, popping back down the road, not too far away. If the main field has gone back, this is the old Abbey of Villiers, as I said, originally founded in 1146. And still the home to the monks. At the time, they were very well protected by the powerful Dukes of the Brabant, which is the area around Brussels.
As the riders then are now getting on with the work. I haven't quite got the name of that rider from Argos on the front of the race, but he's doing a good job for Marcel Kittel. This is the riders now, as you see the line continuing on their way. Adam Hansen passing through. He's the former time trial champion of Australia. There's a little look into the Garmin team car. That is Jonathan Waters, the owner of the team for Garmin Sharp, and Alan Piper himself, an ex-Australian professional cyclist who rode the Tour de France. And their man they're hoping for today is Tyler Farrar, of course. And it will be a big day for Tyler Farrar if he was to win today. This is Thomas Voigtler. Well, while we're looking here at we're just digging out some names for you in the peloton here. We're going to have a chat with Jonathan Waters after the break from that team car. Maybe he'll tell us what's going on and whether Tyler Farrar is up for it or not. But all that when we come back after the break. The peloton goes on, the gap 4:41. Fans, don't forget to sign up for the Nissan Ultimate Access Sweepstakes. Just enter the code word COLO, that's C-O-L-O, at NBCSports.com/Ultimate Access for the chance to win a trip to the USA Pro Cycling Challenge, where you'll get a once-in-a-lifetime experience with members of Radio Shack Nissan Trek. You could also win bikes and signed merchandise. Welcome back as the peloton ride along beneath blue skies and continue on. The yellow helmets indicating Team Sky lead this race on the team. Bradley Wiggins there, just wiping a little bit of sweat away. He is second overall in this race, 7 seconds behind, has a slight advantage over the other pre-race favourite, Cadel Evans, the defending champion. And note he's got all his Sky team all around him. He was a little bit agitated yesterday when he came to the finishing line. He felt the team hadn't done quite the job he expected of them. He had to really fight to make sure he finished in the same time at the top of that hill in Serang. Something he didn't want to do. Well, they're all around him today as we go up to the 3 leaders. At the moment, it is still Christophe Kern, who lost 2 minutes and 1 second thus far. He's regained that plus more, so he's the virtual leader of the Tour de France just now. He's the rider in the green in the breakaway, by the way, not Anthony Roux we saw there. There's the peloton, all looking around each other, questioning each other who's going to send more men to the front and do the chase, because the sprinters today want to win this stage. So it's not the team of Fabian Cancellara, Radio Shack, who are sitting at the front of the peloton, which would be their normal job, because all the teams who feel they've got the winner on the team are putting riders into the chase at the front, and they're holding that breakaway in check. 55 miles, 88 kilometers to race to the finish, 4 minutes 38. It continues to descend. Anthony Roux, who's only got one hand to hold those handlebars with, he has an injured left wrist, leading the ride. He's done most of the work in that breakaway.
Well, he certainly has. He's been inspired this afternoon. That's Christopher Kern putting his hand up there in the green jersey. That's an international signal, if you like, to the race referee behind to say that I need my car. I need to either chat with the team manager or take on board some drinks. What's an interesting situation, Phyllis, if you're in the main field and you need a drink, you actually have to, the rules say you have to go back to the team car to take the drinks from the team car and then come back up into the main field. However, if you're in the breakaway, the racer team car can come up alongside you to take on board drinks.
Coming up 3 hours for the breakaway now, and in fact these riders have been away for 2.5 of those hours. A long breakaway in the saddle for 2 days now for the rider at the back, Mikhail Morkov. In that red spotted jersey as leader of the King of the Mountains. He led for almost 5 hours yesterday. We're looking straight into the eyes of the maillot jaune of this year's Tour de France, Fabian Cancellara, the ever-popular Swiss rider who won the prologue in sensational fashion, tried to steal yesterday's stage, and leads Bradley Wiggins overall by 7 seconds at the moment.
Well, Phil, I have to agree with you. I think the sprinters today are taking a very serious interest in this race. They've left the ripples behind them, the 4th category climber, the Citadel de Namur. They've been through the feeding station. On their horizon is the sprint point of Soigny after 153 kilometres covered, and that's why they want to pull those 3 men back.
Well, let's ask the question, Paul, because on the line we have the team manager of Garmin Sharp, Jonathan Vaughters. Jonathan, can you hear Phil?
Yeah, I can hear
Right, Jonathan, what's the plan today? You've got the sprint in Tyler Farrar. Is he going to mix it with the boys at the finish in Tournai?
Yeah, Tyler will definitely, give it a shot today. But, we're reserving all of our guys for helping Ryder out of the general classification. So, we're not going to be too much part of the chase today.
Now, Ryder Hajidal became the first Canadian winner just a few weeks ago of the Tour of Italy, or the Giro d'Italia. Is he too tired, or how does he feel facing up to likely doing the double, which would be the first since Pantani in 1998?
Well, it's difficult to tell. You're right. It's been a long time since somebody's done the double. But, if you look at the prologue, he rode a better prologue in the Tour than he did in the Giro, and he was pretty much on par, same time as Cadel Evans. And, yesterday he was 9th place on the stage, so obviously showing some good form in the first little hill of the race. So, it's a long way to go, but the indications are that he's recovered and that he's, pretty fresh and pretty sharp.
Well, Tyler, do you realise, Jonathan, just looking at Alan Piper in the car alongside you there, he's looking very concentrated. Is he putting any pressure on Tyler Farrar? Tyler's got a big link with Germany, with Belgium, I mean. And in fact, at the end of the day, you know, the King Albert II is going to be on the finishing line. Is Alan Piper going to put any pressure on Tyler to try and get himself the victory?
Well, I mean, you know, I think Tyler puts enough pressure on himself. I mean, he certainly, you know, would certainly like to get a win. And, you know, it's been a little while since he's gotten one, and he's hungry, that's for sure. You know, and he's got Robbie Hunter to help him out in the final. So, you know, I mean, we don't need to put pressure on our guys. Our guys they're motivated and hungry enough as it is.
Jonathan, apart from a small win in Belgium last August, Tyler hasn't really won anything at all since he won the third stage of the Tour de France last year. Is there any reason for this?
Well, you know, this spring he really wanted to concentrate on trying to develop his endurance and his climbing. He wanted to really concentrate on his endurance and his climbing for you know, Flanders and Visé and the spring classics, and you know, he did that, and you know, it didn't quite work out the way he wanted it to. But the point is he lost a little bit of speed in the early part of the year. So now, you know, he's gone back to his more typical sprint training program, and you know, I think this will be the first race where he has the opportunity to show that, obviously after his injury at the Giro.
All right, well, I'll ask you the question. If Tyler Farrar isn't going to win today, who is?
Well, I mean, Peter Sagan was incredibly impressive yesterday. I mean, I can't say, you know, in a big mass sprint like today, I don't know. But, I mean, for me, you know, a big wide run-in like that certainly suits Greipel. You know, and then Cavendish is the obvious one as well, and then Marcel Kittel. So I guess, I don't know, you know, it's sort of one of those five guys: Farrar, Kittel, Cavendish, Sagan, or Greipel. So those would be my five guys.
One final question, Jonathan. You have a man in the mix, of course, in Ryder Hesjedal as a possible winner, but what do you think of Bradley Wiggins? You would have seen him closer than we did riding yesterday. Is Wiggins somebody who could win this race overall, in your opinion?
Well, you know, I certainly thought Brad was the race favorite coming into the race, and, you know, he rode a good enough prologue to show that he deserves that vector. You know, that said, you know, I noticed a lot of his teammates on the ground yesterday. It seems to be, you know, the tension is pretty high at Team Sky. You know, Brad wasn't looking quite as good as I would have thought that he would have up that last hill yesterday either. So, you know, who knows? Maybe just first day nerves, and he'll ride his way into it.
Now, I see that's Dan Martin at the side of the car riding the first Tour de France. You weren't able to select him last year, Jonathan. He is an Irishman, but his dad lives in the Birmingham region in Great Britain, and he'll be watching these pictures. Now, how do you think Dan's going to go in his first tour?
Only got 7? Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, he got 8th place in his first stage, so that's pretty good already. You know, he did a...
One more for you?
He did an excellent prologue, you know, far above our expectations. So, you know, for Dan, so far, things are looking really good. I mean, again, we're playing the game for Ryder, but I think Dan's going to have a very good first Tour de France. He looks very good on the bike right now.
All right, Jonathan, thanks very much. We've just noticed Cadel Evans riding at the back of the race with a couple of teammates, so we'll say goodbye for now. We hope to catch up with you later on. Have a great tour.
All right, thanks.
Yes, well, Cadel Evans, I don't know what the problem was, Paul, but he was off the back. I think it was routine, wasn't it?
It seemed to me pretty much like it was routine. Nobody panicking very much at all with his teammates up alongside him, pacing him back the way through the main field. There's lots of toing and froing on any day in the Tour de France. The man always looking after him, Marcus Berghardt, the German rider on the BMC racing team. There's no panic. Maybe probably just what the referees like to call a natural break.
Well, yesterday, you know, Paul, Cadel Evans said this morning in the press that Marcus Berghardt, the rider in the yellow shoes, took Cadel to the front of the peloton towards the finish yesterday. He said they were pedaling at 47 miles an hour to put him in the right place for that uphill sprint.
Now, 47 miles an hour, kilometres an hour.
Miles an hour.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Which is 74 kilometres an hour it was in the morning's papers, and that was Cadel's word. So there you are. These boys really can move, can't they? So the riders then are looking set. Jonathan Vaughters clearly expects a sprint today. He doesn't seem too sure that Farah will deliver, but let's hope he does, the American rider. Vive l'Ardèche, yes, that's the area we're in now, and indeed, vive le Tour de France, as we continue on now, hopefully sooner or later catching those three leaders. It's not just a piece of gear, it's peace of mind. Enter to win a Trek Madone at roadid.com/ride. And by the Le Monde Revolution. Direct drive technology makes roller-based bike trainers obsolete. Welcome back to the Tour de France. The peloton here passing through the town of Nivelles. And it has an abbey in the town of Bichat-Sadu, which was founded back in the year 648. So it's 2,000 years old. More, in fact. Now, this is moments ago. We saw Cadel off the back. He's escorted back up by a German and a Swiss rider. His two teammates, number 8 at the back, is Michael Shaw. Cadel is in the middle, the front man with the yellow shoes, and that is Marcus Burkhardt. They've put him safely back in his place and repositioned him. The gap continues to come down. These are the leaders here. They're leaving the other end of Nivelles. At the back is the polka dot jersey. He'll wear that again tomorrow of Michael Morkov of Denmark. And in the middle, we have Christophe Kern of France on the Europcar team in the green. And right on the front, the man that started the move today, Anthony Roux, who spent his whole life racing for the same team, FDJ, or Française des Jeux. They're still clear, but they're not going to make the stage win. The peloton feel they have this breakaway totally under control, as they now race. So who is going to win? Now there's a question. Let's have a look at our Road ID Challenge fan predictions and see who you thought would win today's stage. Mark Cavendish, 31%. Peter Sagan, 21%. I can't believe it drops away to just 5% for the rest, because there are a number of riders today. Head on over to roadid.com/ride to make your predictions for tomorrow's stage winner, and you'll be entered to win daily prizes and a 2013 model of the Trek Madone. Well, there are a lot of sprinters can challenge Cavendish and Sagan today, believe me, including not least Tyler Farah and Matthew Goss and Andre Greipel. Another lovely crowd as we race through the Belgian city of Nivelles, or town, as the peloton are holding at 4:15. Christophe Kern in the breakaway has lost the least time. He is still the virtual leader of the Tour de France in the breakaway. I would think in the next 45 minutes that will change.
Well, you might have seen just a little bit earlier, as you can see Morkov there just shaking his legs, trying to get a little bit of the ache out of there. We saw earlier the Collegiate Church of St. Gertrude. Well, in fact, there's a beer here in Nivelles known as the Beer of Gertrude, to add to the original beer from the area, which was the Jean de Nivelles.
I think every monastery in Belgium makes its own beer brand, Paul, so why should they be different?
Well, you know, there are about 350 different kinds of beer in Belgium, and I've only sampled 3 of them.
Well, I'm saying nothing as we're watching here the breakaway, the bunch rather, and how different it is today, because the sprinters want their men to win the sprint. And gone from the front are the black jerseys of Radio Shack and Fabian Cancellara. The sprinters have put men at the front to keep the pace steady. They will feel that breakaway is under control at 4:11. The Lotto team here, right on the front, are riding for Andre Greipel. Then the lighter jerseys are riding for Matthew Goss. The black jerseys for Mark Cavendish. It is going to be a big sprint, but sooner or later they're going to have to catch these 3. Sunday, July 22nd, the Izod IndyCar Series continues on the NBC Sports Network. Will Power looks to defend last year's win from the streets of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. It's the 2012 Edmonton Indy, Sunday, July 22nd, on the NBC Sports Network. Well, the riders coursing through here in the Tour de France. And narrow streets, but nothing causing concern at the moment for these riders. Hand up there by Michael Charel. There is the Green Edge team at second wheel now. They're looking forward to a possible chance of a stage win here with Matthew Goss in his second Tour de France. So as they prepare the way now for a lot of sprinters today. But Matthew Goss, I think, will be up for it. Let's find out as he speaks earlier today with Craig Hummer.
Matt, you and I have already talked a couple times, but you got the team its first Grand Tour stage win in May in the Giro. Everyone says, though, the Tour is a little bit different. So describe what makes a sprint stage at the Tour so unique.
Yeah, look, it's definitely a little bit different. The sprints probably start winding up about 50, 60 Ks to go in the stage rather than 30 or 40 at the Giro. But, you know, they're very similar, but I guess there's a little bit more expectation. There's bigger crowds here. Everyone's a little bit more desperate. Everyone wants that Tour de France stage win, I guess, just a tiny little bit more. And it makes these finishes really fast and really hectic. But with a good team like we've got together here, hopefully we can avoid most of that and, you know, be right at the pointy end today at the finish.
You were on the pointy end yesterday towards the finish, working, of course, I think, for Michael Albacini and Simon Gerrans. Today, though, I would think all resources are going towards you and the responsibility falls on your shoulders. Is it fun to have the game face on?
Yeah, definitely. Do I look a little bit heavier with the weight on my shoulders? But no, look, I'm really looking forward to it. We've trained, we've been through the motions many times, and now it's time to play, I guess. This stage is going to be a good finish. I think it's not too dangerous. We've got a good team together to lead it out, and no, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can do. It's going to be my first Tour de France stage with the team really working for me in a big bunch sprint.
All right, get after it.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.
Yes, Gossi, as the Aussies call him, is up for it today. This is his team, the Orica Green Edge, the first ever Australian back team to ride in the Tour de France. A lot of excitement back in Australia. They have no obvious overall winner for this race, so they're going for stage wins, and they're relying heavily on Matthew Goss to get the wins for them. And he's also looking for the green jersey as well. Only two Australians ever won that. And one of them has worn the green. Centre right there was Stuart O'Grady just passing through. Look at the workload of the chasing sprinters teams now. Lotto 48%. That's the riders at the front setting the pace. It looks as though Lotto's doing most. They're riding for Andre Greipel. Team Argus Shimano 41%. They're riding for Marcel Kittel. And Orica Green Edge putting in just 11% at the moment for Matty Goss. Meanwhile, up front here, we have these three riders out front. The gap is coming down all of the time. Paul, as we look at these three riders here, don't forget Orica Green Edge, the Aussies who have on that team Matthew Goss, himself a stage winner this year in the Giro d'Italia. He's never won a stage of the Tour de France. He is a rider who wants to deliver for his brand new team, because the Aussies have never had a team in the Tour de France before.
Well, I disagree with you there when you say he's never won a stage in the Tour de France. Maybe he's not gone across the line in first place, but he's been instrumental in making Mark Cavendish, or helping Mark Cavendish, to win a lot of the stages that he won. Now, a lot of the Australians, like a lot of the British riders before them and a lot of the Americans before that, they wanted to have a national team, if you like. And that's what finally, after Team Sky has done for Great Britain, that's what Orica Green Edge has become for the Australians. And for a couple of riders like Robbie McEwen, it made him ride an extra 6 to 8 months on his career because he actually wanted to be part of that experience. Stuart O'Grady, riding in the Tour de France for the 16th time, wanted to be part of that Australian team going through to the Tour de France. And yes, they do want to win. They've got a great sprinter in Matty Goss, a former winner of the one-day classic Milano-Sanremo. 36 kilometres an hour. We're legal this afternoon.
Only just. We got smiles in sadness on that sign.
But finishing off, it's a great concept, and it's good for the Australian riders to have something to aim for. When you bear in mind, there's about 100 Australian professional cyclists scattered across the globe.
Absolutely right, yes. Well, 40 kilometres an hour, or 25 miles an hour, is the average speed they've accomplished in the first 3 hours of racing today. It's an okay average speed, but it's not setting records as they continue west now towards the finish in Tournai. Last time we were there was 1966. Well, we weren't there because I wasn't there. Neither were probably any of you watching, but the Tour de France was certainly there. And just off to the right there, you can only just see the Orica Green Edge colours, those blue, green and white colours. Now we'll come back to the back of the group. This is back to Tony Martin here. He just wants to get this day over and done with. You see the plastic case on his left wrist there. He's broken a scaphoid on the side of his hand. and that is an unfortunate injury. It means he's probably put his hand down as he fell yesterday in the crash, and he's broken, in effect, his a little bone on the side of his wrist there. It's very, very painful. There's no question about that. His face is giving nothing away. All he'll do today is hide in the bunch, get the day over and done with. He said, for the moment, I'm just happy I'm still in the Tour de France, because for me, this is a big ambition of mine this year. And he wants to get to the first time trial as the world champion. He would love to win a stage. So as we look down, this is a beautiful area, by the way. This is rather special here, because we are heading towards one of the few inclined plains in the world. This is the inclined plain of Ronquière. It is a feat of Belgian engineering, the Ronquière inclined plain. It began as a simple canal running between the cities of Brussels and Charleroi. Originally used as a passenger for vessels up to 300 tons, it was modified in 1962, allowing it to accommodate 1,350-ton barges, and there they are. This was accomplished by adding an electrically powered inclined plane, which carries the vessel just over 1,500 yards on a 5% incline. It is a work of sheer genius, this, believe me. To my knowledge, they have a small one in Great Britain, and that's it. I used to own a canal boat, so I know all about inclined planes. Incredible.
Don't miss a single epic second. The London Olympic Games, coming July 27th to the NBC Sports Network.
Well, second road race stage of the Tour de France today. 3 riders have been out in front since the first half hour of racing. They're approaching the point for the green jersey sprint in about 12 miles time, and they're still clear of the field. Christophe Kern, Anthony Roux and Michael Morkov. Yes, Morkov, the same man we saw away yesterday for almost the whole day. He's still the leader in the King of the Mountains. The gap is holding now, and neither going forward nor backwards. 4¼ minutes the lead, but I think they will start to chase them down. But it looks they're going to leave it a bit later now. So there's the peloton. Now, today's Strava segment of the day is a minor bump with only 2.2% average grade, but it may prove tough. The climb up the Rue Héripont is just a few kilometres shy of an intermediate sprint, so teams will be leading out the sprints, of course, to score points towards that green jersey classification. You can visit Strava.com to learn more about the Rue Héripont, and while you're there, create a segment on your favourite ride and see how you compare against friends, local riders and the pros. There's the peloton just passing that famous incline plane here, which takes the barges up the hill and drops him on the top. This is a little device, a feat of engineering. The boats will go in, the chambers fill up, and they just ferry the boat up that incline plane, still floating on water. You can see one of the containers there, and drops them off on the little canal on the summit. Incredible feat, it really is. And so now the peloton all breathing in to get through the narrow streets here, Paul. And the crowd have been out in the force today.
No, they certainly have. Throughout the whole of these Belgian stages, there have been a lot of crowd coming in to see, and it was a bit surprising in the opening day prologue, because at about 11 o'clock in the morning I thought, wow, there's nobody here. Then all of a sudden it was as if somebody opened the floodgates and they came from everywhere.
Yeah, it's a great atmosphere in Liège. They gave a lovely send-off to the Tour de France, which of course takes 3 weeks now to re-find Paris. Lots of mountains on the way, the Pyrenees, the Alps, and into the Vosges mountains as well on the eastern side of France, where we will find our first hill in a few days' time. And it's an absolute brute, and that will give us some idea as to who is up for the big battle ahead. We are moving towards the sprint now, which is the sprint point on the road. 20 points for the first rider across, 1 point for the 15th. That is the battle for the green jersey. So even though we have 3 riders in front, Fabien Cancellara may not even get involved, but watch out for Peter Sagan. He's wearing the green jersey, borrowed from Cancellara, who's still the leader, but Sagan can sprint. I think he'll have a go.
He will certainly have a go. A lot of people, very learned people in cycling, have told him he can win the green jersey. You don't have to be a pure sprinter to win the green jersey points competition at the Tour de France, but you've got to be regular. Fabien Cancellara starts the day with 55 points to Peter Sagan's 49 and Edvald Boasson-Hagen's 42. But today is a serious sprinter stage, and I would think we'll start to see the Greipels, the Cavendishes, and the Sagans move a little bit closer to the top of that green jersey points competition.
Well, the reason the green jersey came into the Tour de France was because sprinters can't climb hills, and as a result they could never win the yellow jersey. So they gave a competition for the sprinters in 1953, which was to race for a green jersey. So that's normally reserved for sprinters, but sometimes the hill climbers are so talented, it has been known to win both.
Well, in 1969, a certain man by the name of Eddie Merckx won not only the yellow jersey, but the green jersey, the King of the Mountains. And I'm not sure if there was a Best Young Rider competition at the time, but he probably would have won that too.
He would have done, but there wasn't. But yeah, he carried off all the 3 jerseys of the Tour de France, which is an immense achievement. And Eddie Merckx, being Belgian, is on the race at the moment. And he told Peter Sagan yesterday, he said, you, in your first tour, can win green in Paris. And if the big man says it, you better take notice.
And that's the amazing thing about this young man from Slovakia. He was born in Czechoslovakia before it split up into the 2 separate nations of Slovakia and Slovenia. But at 22
in the Czech Republic.
At 22 years of age, Phil, he just does not know what his capacity is going to be and how he will develop as a professional bike rider.
Well, there's the beautiful scenery here in Belgium as we race towards the finish in Tournai, and the field still chasing 3. We're looking at the peloton now, speeding between the cables here of the telephone wires. They are still working out what to do about this breakaway. 4 minutes 12, it's just changed to. We've been around 4:12 to 4:15 now, Paul, for about half an hour.
It's locked in. It's got to that point when they realised they were not going to catch that 3-man breakaway before the sprint point in Soigny, so they've turned off the serious chase. They will wait till they get a little bit closer to the finish before really whipping up the pacemaking. But when they really start to chase, you watch that clock and see how quickly that time gap starts to plummet.
Yes, in fact, most of the work for the chase back, and it's been the way since the gun was dropped today, has been done by the Lotto team, which is a Belgian team, and they've been putting in a big workload along with the white jerseys of the Argus Shimano team. They have 2 great sprinters on the team here. Andre Greipel is on the Lotto team. Marcel Kittel is the sprinter from Germany on the Argus team.
Yeah, certainly. I think today everybody believes that the big sprinter will be Andre Greipel. 14 victories so far this season, and he's got a lead-out train, which could be the big advantage for him over Mark Cavendish. Mark Cavendish, and it seems to be a new word that a lot of the team managers seem to have coined this year, Phil. They're going to have to freelance it, which means they're going to have to be using the lead-outs from other teams. So there's going to be a bit, I would say there'll be a little bit of a battle for Andre Greipel's wheel, and I wonder if that wheel will be given up to, of course, Mark Cavendish.
But what about, we heard from Jonathan Waters earlier, Paul, and he was saying that they weren't going to put any sprinters up there to bring it back, because I don't think that's very fair, do you? I mean, does that mean he's got no faith in Tyler Farrell winning the stage, or doesn't he want to help the other sprinters bring back these 3 riders?
Well, it's difficult because he's got a 2-pronged attack at the Tour as well. He's got to think about the possibility of an overall win or an overall high place for his man rider Hezjedal. So they haven't brought a team here which is a full team with a lead-out train. They've got to balance the teams, and we've said on a number of times since the start of this race, that is a very difficult thing for Team Sky Pro Cycling as well. They've come here to win the Tour de France, yet they've got the fastest man in the world. So how do you build a team to do both things? It's a very difficult thing to do.
Well, I'd put it to you, Paul, it's probably a diversion they wish they didn't have, and I think they would like to concentrate all their efforts just on Bradley Wiggins, but that's pure conjecture on my part. They've got Cavendish in there, and they've got to give him his chance to see what he can do. Marcel Kittel's team, which are on the front now, the Argus Shimano team. Kittel has won 7 times this year. He is a very fast sprinter, and he's never been in the Tour de France before. And so I would be very wary of that man bringing the big surprise today as we race on now through Henri Pont.
Yeah, but what always amazes me, Phil, is the number of people who are ready to stand up and criticise Mark Cavendish. But, you know, when it comes to the big occasions, he's always ready.
He delivers, doesn't he?
He delivers, and he comes up with the goods. You've got to give respect to a man who, in 4 years participation at the Tour de France, has amassed 20 individual stage victories. Some people took 10-year, 12-year careers to win so many stages.
I could give you about 2,000 names and never won that many ever.
Oh, you put my name in there.
Oh, well, Paul Sherwin, everybody rode the Tour de France 7 times and won absolutely nothing.
No, exactly. But I enjoyed it, and I got round, and I managed to get onto the hallowed cobblestones of the Champs-Élysées on 5 separate occasions.
But having said you won absolutely nothing, Paul, to have the ability to even get in the Tour de France, there are very few who have done that. The peloton through the trees. What a beautiful setting it really is as it heads towards the sprint now, as the big pack here continue on the way. They are not going to catch those 3 riders now before the sprint, even though we have ducked inside those 4 minutes. One thing that we can guarantee is that when we take a break and come back, we will be with the race to that sprint point, so don't go too far away. Today's a day we think of green rather than yellow, the points competition. This is the situation at the start of the day. Cancellara, a 55-point scored in 2 finishes on stages. Peter Sagan won yesterday. He's got 49. Boysenhagen is 42. Philippe Gilbert is in 4th place. There we're looking at the injury to the world time trial champion. He crashed yesterday. Tony Martin sat near the back, and on the right, the rider he fell off with, and that also got the same wrist injury, and that is Luis Leon Sanchez, both falling on the same side yesterday. Apparently a rider hit a pothole and they could not avoid it. But we're now headed towards the sprint point. We're nearly there. It'll be 31 miles from the finish when we hit that green spot. It is a significant point. This last 2 years, it's new rules here now. They only have 1 sprint. We used to have up to 3, but this one carries major points. Instead of just 6 points, it carries 20 for the first rider over the line and 1 point for the 15th rider over the line. And you've got to be consistent if you want to take that green jersey home in Paris. 3.5 minutes, the gap now. We're inside 60 kilometres, 38 miles. We are 5 kilometres for the leaders from that significant sprint point today. They're not going to be caught, and not wishing to be insulting to them, none of these 3 riders are going to win the green jersey in Paris either. But they're going to take the major points away, the first 3. But we will see a typical stage finish sprint for the riders who race for the 4th place between the likes of Cavendish, Matthew Goss, Andre Greipel, Mark Renshaw, Marcel Kittel and Tyler Farrar. They've all got to go, and of course Peter Sagan.
The difficult thing, we talk about the yellow jersey, we talk about the King of the Mountains jersey. The difficult thing about trying to win the green jersey points competition, Phil, is you've got to come out every day and try and get yourself some points, and that's the important thing.
Just looking at the man that started the break today, Anthony Roux, and that left wrist is very, very painful. He can hardly hold. He's got his 2 small fingers there snapped together with elastoplast. I think he dislocated one of them in the fall, and it's been painful for him all day. Michael Morkov, never ridden the Tour before. He's never been out of our camera lens since he started this one. He was in the breakaway for nearly 5 hours yesterday. He's done on just 3.5 hours up front again today. He mustn't overdo it. The Tour de France is not a 2-day race. And there's the peloton down there. If you, in the world champion, I can see Mark Cavendish also. There's these 3 leaders now have come into 3:29 the gap.
Yeah, well, Phil, the first rider to cross the line will get himself 20 points. And it's 13 riders. There's 13 points available for the 4th rider to cross the line. So that's a fairly important amount of points. And that's why I think we'll see a very serious sprint. Mark Cavendish, you can just spot him just over to the front on the right-hand side in that white jersey with the rainbow bands around. That's the jersey worn by the current world road racing champion. And of course, bear in mind, there's a little bit of dosh available on the finish line as well, because the first rider to cross the line in the sprint point will take home a smart $2,500.
Always worth doing that. It's around £1,750, I think. It's pretty much the same, the Australian dollar and the American dollar right now. I see a lot of riders moving up there from the Liquid Gas Cannondale team as well. Now, what's happened here? This is David Miller at the back. David lost a little bit of time yesterday, and he's back with the medical car right now. Having a look whether he's been visiting the medical car or whether he's just waiting to get by him. No, he's visiting.
He definitely is. A lot of action. That doctor, by the way, has been a doctor at the Tour de France for many, many years. And in fact, he picked me up off the floor a couple of times as well. So that gives you an idea of just how much experience he's got. Hard to know what's going on with David Miller here, but he did take up a tube of some kind of pomade. And who knows what that's for. We'll find out later on when we get the medical report at the end of the day. Because not only do we get the race results issued by the race organisation, there is a medical report which gives us an indication of kind of problems the riders have been through during the day.
Well, you remember a couple of years ago, David Miller had this allergy to sun. And in fact, he's got this sun rash again here, and we haven't really had any sun yet. So I think he's probably getting some sun cream off the doctor.
Well, a couple of years ago, he had a very, very nasty allergy. In fact, the whole of his body came out red, and he had to cover it with really thick sun cream to try and prevent that happening. It seemed to have been put under control for a couple of seasons.
Yeah.
Maybe that's coming back again. 5,000 meters to go to the sprint. That's 3 miles for the main field.
And that's a gap of about 3 minutes 18 between the two groups. Well, we saw a rush earlier, I noted, of the Liquid Gas Cannondale team moving up Peter Sagan on the right-hand side of that bunch when he pointed out to you the whereabouts of the world champion Mark Cavendish. So there's no doubt then that Sagan is taking an interest in the upcoming sprint. So we've got that Go camera in the car today with Jonathan Voices. Let's just have a look inside. That's Alan Piper on the right.
So, guys, just a little bit of info you probably saw in your race book. You come into the bonification sprint, and directly after a turn more than 90 degrees, and then we veer off to the left and the wind changes direction. It's slightly side tail wind. There's not so much wind. Just a heads up for that, because they'll be going hard through that bonification sprint. So we hit the highway down here, 7 kilometres straight to the bonification sprint, and then a hard right and veer to the left, wind direction change, heads up.
Yes, Alan Piper there. Well, he's got a long memory. It's no longer a bonification sprint, which means time bonuses, but it is very important indeed for points now for the green jersey, telling his riders what to do. Well, Belgium has put on its best hat today. It really does look a very pretty country today as we course now west. Might be a slight change of wind direction as they do make that sprint, and 20 points for the win.
Yeah, you can see a lot of organisation. I would be interested to see just exactly what Sky Pro Cycling are going to do for Mark Cavendish coming up to this sprint point, because I'm certain Cavendish will go for the sprint as well. Maybe not necessarily, Phil, thinking about the green jersey points classification, but trying to blow the cobwebs out of his legs, because he hasn't been that competitive this season. He's been in and out of training, in and out of events, and he likes to get himself a couple of days under the belt before he goes for the sprints. But because of the nature of this year, leading up to the Commonwealth, the Olympic Games, he will, I think, participate here to try and get the sprinting legs into action and try and be a factor on the running towards the finish.
I think that's very right. In fact, he's won 8 races, Mark, but one of those was an overall classification in the race in Holland, the ZLM Tour, where he didn't win a stage. Finished 2nd and 3rd. He was beaten by the riders he's about to take on now. So he'll want a bit better result against them this time.
And I think
we're looking at the 3 leaders now as we see the kilometre to go to the sprint point of the day. Anthony Roux, Christoph Kern, Michael Markov out in front since the first half hour of racing, and they're still holding an advantage over the field of 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
But it has come down. Let's not forget that it was as high as 8 minutes, but they've never been given any freedom here this afternoon. 800 metres. I doubt if Michael Morkov will make a move for this, Phil, because the 2 French riders have done most of the pace-making here this afternoon. He only went into the breakaway to get himself the King of the Mountains points, but as we said, it's 1,500 euros for the first rider to cross the line, or about $2,500.
Well, I think the first prize should go to the man in white. He started the move. He's in terrible pain from the injury to his left 2 fingers, and his name is Anthony Roux. Let's see if that's the way they play the game. I think you're absolutely right about Morkov. He'll let the 2 French boys have their moment.
Yeah, but he will pick up a little prize himself because it's €500 or $750 for third place. So he's had a good day out, and he will continue to wear that polka dot jersey tomorrow.
Yes, he will. He got what he came out to do, and that's the view we're going to get in a few minutes' time when the real sprinters come through for fourth place. And now it is being wound up by Christoph Kern. It looks like they're not going to challenge Christoph as he comes up. The man in green, who celebrated the birth of their first child, Tom, just the day before the Tour de France began, and he's got his first prize. He can start saving for the school education now. So Christoph Kern takes that ahead of Roux and followed over by Morkov.
Yeah, but what's more important for me, Phil, is going to be the sprinter for fourth place. And not very often you talk about a fourth place sprint being very important, but I think it is because it's all about the green jersey points competition. We saw yesterday the big names coming to the front to sprint it out for there. We saw Matthew Goss involved. We saw Andre Greipel. We saw Mark Cavendish. And what about the man in the orange jersey, Mark Renshaw? He's trying to be a sprinter in his own right now, having been a very big, long lead-out for Mark Cavendish.
Well, the great thing about it is, Christoph Kern confirmed the winner there over Roux and Morkov, is that we are about to see a sprint finish in the race enacted. This is a very good new rule by the race direction here, because they've given maximum points out on course, and then, of course, we have the next maximum points at the finishing line. I think we're going to see a good sprint at 1,000 metres to go. Under they go. Liquigas team is there for Sagan. He's in the all-green jersey, number 3.
Number 3, that is Sagan. He's got his teammates leading him out, but look, they're all queuing up behind him. You've got Orica Greenedge lining up. They want to try and make this for their man, and that, of course, is Matty Goss. And also mixing it in all on his own there is the white jersey with the rainbow bands around the middle, Mark Cavendish.
Well, this will be interesting now. Daniel Loss is the rider on the front, trying to deliver these Peter Sagan to the line. The other sprinters will not like the location of Peter Sagan. They want to take this boy down a peg or two. They're lining up behind him now. They're trying to get Goss through on the other side. Cavendish is about 7 or 8 men back here. The final lead out. Can Matty Goss? No signs at all of Farah or Renshaw. As they go to the line now, it looks to me as though it is Andre Greipel trying to get up on the shoulder of Matthew Goss as they come for the line now. And Renshaw is there in the orange jersey. This is like a sprint for the finish here, and it's Goss leading to the line. Looks over at Renshaw and Cavendish.
Well, that, Phil, 12 months ago would have been the lead-out train for Mark Cavendish.
Yes,
Goss, Renshaw, Cavendish. The sprinters are coming out to play. That was a dress rehearsal of the finish line here in Tournai, and we're going to have a big showdown very shortly. And look at this one more time. Matthew Goss, with his power, looks over to another Australian, Mark Renshaw, in second place, and Cavendish was having a go, but he was a little bit boxed in without his normal lead-out train.
Well, Greipel won't be too pleased with that result, and Sagan now knows how sprinters really sprint in this race, because 3 of them got over the top of him.
Well, if I can just say, Phil, from a little bit of experience, despite the fact that he's learning a fraction, Peter Sagan, when you come down to the finish and you see the big boys playing, they will be going a lot faster than they were going at this intermediate sprint, because the sprint for the finish starts about 15 to 20 kilometres out from the finishing line, and you've got to battle for position. You've got to hold your position. Then you've got to try and open up the sprint down towards the end.
Well, he's only 22, don't forget, and he is a very, very fast finisher, but now he's seeing what it's really like in the Tour de France when the men with the big reputations mix up. And as Paul said, those 2 riders were the teammates of Mark Cavendish, and now they race against him in the sprints. It's a very interesting concept.
The most important thing about being a professional in this sport, Phil, is not to make too many enemies, because one day the guys that you are with may well be on a different team.
Yes, absolutely right. Well, the rider here from Orica Greenedge, he has slipped away from the field, but he's gone back in now as the riders regroup. Now we'll get down to the job in hand of catching those riders out in front, and that sprint brought it to inside 2 minutes now. It's 1:58 to the 3 leaders. Well, that was a sprint that was worthy of any stage finish, the way they took that series for a few points in the green jersey competition. Greipel's just dodging in behind those 2 leading riders. And there is the situation. 20 points going to Kern, 17 to Roux, 15 to Morkov. And Goss, best of the rest, 13 points, 11 for Mark Renshaw, and it will be 10 for Mark Cavendish. There we are. So that's the result. There's also more places because the first 15 riders get the points, but we don't have the privilege of seeing the camera result. updated. Peter Sagan, if it all goes well in the final sprint today, will wear the green jersey in his own right today, because Cancellara has lost it at the moment out on the road. Well, that really was a super sprint, and it's nothing to what we will expect when we come down to the finish in Tournai. Don't forget, we still have 3 riders up there. We're inside 2 minutes now. Look at this. Matthew Goss, once the teammate of Mark Cavendish, shows him how to do it. Well, let's have a look at our Cadillac Tour leaders at the start of the day. Cancellara in yellow. He also owns the green, which is being worn by Peter Sagan, and he's lost that green already today, Cancellara. Michael Morkov is an increased stronger leader today in the King of the Mountains Polka Dot, and TJ Van Garden's enjoying his 3rd day as leader, as the best rookie of the Tour. He wears a white jersey. Right in the centre of our picture, now obscured, is the defending champion Cadel Evans, who seems happy with the way the day is going. It's a day off in effect for him. All he's got to do, sounds easy, doesn't it, is ride the race distance and finish in the same time, because this isn't a day to try and win the Tour de France. But, you know, all of these riders now know what the sprinter is like, because all of the sprinters there really did mix it for that 4th place in the green jersey competition. And at the moment, the green jersey is being worn tonight by Peter Sagan. The big favourite, though, to win the stage, even though he just got beaten in that interim sprint, is still Mark Cavendish. And Mark Cavendish has won 20 stages of the Tour de France. Excuse me, everyone. And he's now looking for his 21st career Tour de France stage win today. So let's take a closer look at the Manx missile in today's Physique Athlete Profile. Cavendish comes. The missile from the Isle of Man has got his win. Here he comes, Mark Cavendish and Andre Greipel. Oh boy, revenge is very, very sweet. The Manx missile is about to be launched again. Once he gets to the front, there is no one in the world will beat him.
It's not going to be easy for me to dominate the sprints this year. I'll hopefully win a stage, you know, but the pinnacle of cycle sport is that yellow jersey. It's what everybody knows. It's what the history of cycling is about. I don't think anything can match it.
The man in black, Bradley Wiggins. So far this season, he has never put a wheel out of place.
That's an incredible thing, you know, a British sponsor and a British team with a British rider going in as a favourite to wear yellow in Paris. Brad has been working hard towards it. He's got an incredible group of guys around him. I'm there as world champion to try for the sprint, but for me to be part of that history-making team, it's something that, you know, will be a big, big thing on my part of my house for the rest of my career.
This is going to be a formality. There's nobody can match the speed of this amazing kid. Now, where is the Manx missile? There he goes. Somebody just launched him. He will win the green jersey.
In Paris, you know, that Champs-Élysées is the most beautiful boulevard in the world, in my opinion, you know, and there's nothing quite like raising your arms when you see the Arc de Triomphe in front of you.
He'll never be as fast as Mark Cavendish. Eyes down, because this one will be Mark Cavendish's 3rd win on the Champs-Élysées.
Nobody's won it 3 times anyway, let alone 3 times in a row. I know that finish really, really well. And it's not a finish that you need a massive full lead out for, so I'd like to go and try and press history there as well.
Mark Cavendish takes to the high spot on the Champs-Élysées.
I can't let Brad stand on his own in Paris on the podium, can I, you know?
That's our Physique Athlete Profile, Mark Cavendish there, his feet very firmly on the ground. He knows the situation with the Sky team, and he knows he wants to win in Paris. He's going all the way for sure, despite the Olympic Games being around the corner. He's 27 now. He is a small, powerful sprinter indeed. 20 wins so far. Will he be 21 today? The record by any sprinter is 22, and that's Andre Darrigard, so we'll see. Well, the boys with the yellow helmets and the one having a drink, that is Bradley Wiggins, and he causes the confusion here because he's here to win the Tour de France, and that does take precedence over the sprinters for sure. So that's a story which will continue to unfold over the next 3 weeks, I would think. The peloton now settling down. The gap has gone up again. We expected that. They eased back after that sprint. We're quite happy to let it go a little bit longer out front before they start to bring it right down. Was 1:58. It's now almost a minute added on since they eased up after that sprint finish. There's the back of the peloton taking a little bit of time out. And the crowd's craning their necks here just to see the giants of what they used to call them, the convicts of the road in the Tour de France, because they kept stealing fruit off all the stands as they went through and drinks out of the bars. And everybody wondered who was going to pay for them as they didn't stop. But this is the Tour de France, of course. So, as we continue on, the peloton are all together. Looking over their heads here, everybody eased off quite a lot at the moment. That gap is slowly climbing back up again. There'll be a little false hope by the three leaders up front, I would short. Now, don't forget, make sure now to sign up for our Discover Card Fantasy Cycling Challenge at nbcsports.com/challenge. It's the chance to win the practice phase prize, a Cervelo R5 or S5 bike. And if you win today's stage, you'll receive a Garmin Sharp kit courtesy of Castelli. So there's always prizes here on NBC for taking part in our competitions, and that's a good one. Name your own team. All right, well, the race goes on now. The big excitement is left is the finish, of course, in Tournai. These three boys, well, there's still hope because they've added a minute back onto their lead. Is it a false hope? This man who's resting on those handlebars in pain, Anthony Roux, is still in the lead. The yellow jersey here is Cancellara talking with the injured Luis Leon Sanchez. We'll take a break. Rejoin us. Welcome back. We're looking at live pictures of the Tour de France here as the riders now are losing ground on those three leaders again. They've lost a minute since that sprint that we've seen in Soigny. So as we watch the riders go about their daily routine, well, I've got three guys who are doing their daily routine, preparing for the primetime show tonight. So let's go up to Bob Key, Iceman Scott Moninger, and Gentle Liam to tell us all about the show tonight.
Phil, thanks so much. You know, the problem is when Phil Liggett invents a nickname for you, it's probably going to stick for years to come. Iceman's nice. I don't know about Gentle Liam, regardless. The intermediate sprint, Matt Goss takes it down again, but you wonder as we look ahead to the sprint finish how much fatigue might be a factor for some of these guys.
Yeah, and it actually doesn't have anything to do with the fact they might be lazy. It's just a physiological thing. You know, the better sprinter you are, the worse your endurance is. And I was fortunate to be teammates with a lot of good sprinters throughout my career. Davis Finney, Malcolm Elliott, Gord Fraser, all those guys, they want to sprint once, and that's it. You know, 2 sprints, you start to get into the endurance mode, and that's just not their forte. They want to save it all, save one bullet for the final, and that's why I think you didn't see Tyler Fair sprinting or Greipel. So it's, you know, there's certainly an endurance factor because it's a 3-week race. But when you can break it down day by day, these guys want to do one big burning of the match, and that's it.
Out of that group, who has the endurance, do you think?
Well, Mark Cavendish certainly showed last year that he had incredible endurance. He went for a lot of the intermediate sprints in last year's Tour de France, and he was able to win 5 stages. That shows you just how amazing Mark Cavendish's accomplishment was last year in the Tour de France.
Well, more of this coming up. Tour Prime Time, 8 Eastern Time. We will talk about how long Fabian Cancellara can keep yellow. We will dish on Mark Cavendish. And, of course, it is Ask Bob Key, presented by Head Sweats, Phil Liggett's favorite segment. Phil, back to you.
So you're getting your own back, are you, Liam? Okay. And yes, well, there were some big names there from Scott Moninger. I must say, names like Malcolm Ellis. He's only just retired, by the way, at 50 years of age, the British rider from Sheffield. So there's the peloton in a long straight line. It looks as though they're beginning to get angry again down there. A nice round 25 miles or 40 kilometers to go. 2 minutes 48. The they're going to have to start chasing very shortly, Paul. I nearly called you Sean then, but don't ask me why.
Well, I've no idea why you would, but probably because we've just gone through the town in Belgium known as Silly. So that was a silly remark.
Correct, it was. Indeed, it was. I did notice that, but I didn't understand it.
That's the name of the town. It's just a small town. It's not too far away from the race route here this afternoon. Those yellow flags with the cock on them that you can see just to the side, those are the flags of the region of Wallonie, which is the French-speaking part of Belgium. These riders, I'm amazed, Phil, have managed to stretch out their advantage just a little bit more, but I think this is just the calm before the storm, because we will see a rip-roaring charge into Tournai here this afternoon, regarded by many as one of the most cultural towns in Belgium.
Cheers all the way for these three riders, and a long breakaway like this deserves a lot of cheers as well, because it takes a lot of effort to hold off the peloton in the Tour de France, effort which you may need in the days ahead. And if you haven't got it, then you finish up going home, because if you don't finish every day within a certain time of the winner, you are eliminated from the Tour de France. It's not a casual stroll around 3 countries as this year's Tour is. Having started in Belgium, we'll be in France tomorrow. We'll have a little incursion into Switzerland before we finally come back to Paris.
Well, an interesting story, Phil, as we look at the pacemaking getting whipped up at the front end of the main field. At one stage in the Tour de France, the last man in the overall standings was getting so much publicity for being the Lanterne Rouge, or the last man in the race, that the race organisation, after the 5th day of the race, decided to eliminate the last rider in the overall standings every day. I was quite lucky in those days, because I was 10th from the end.
Yes, indeed. Did you ever finish last?
No, I didn't, but I got pretty close. In fact, there was you know that story, because in fact I crashed early on in the Tour de France, and I ended up being last man overall, but I did not want to be last man overall.
Unlike most people.
And every time it happened, I actually overtook a guy in the standings. The guy abandoned. It was like the kiss of death.
Well, I think Fabian was listening to you there, because he just gave you a nice wave there, Paul. Funnily enough, that he keeps on, whenever we meet Fabian Cancellara, he says, "You are the 2 Englishmen who always interview me." He likes our commentary. As we're now watching here, and Fabian Cancellara is a very special rider as far as we're concerned. He's such a unique man. He has been 4 times a world champion. He is the defending Olympic champion of the time trial. He's got a medal in the World Road Race Championships. He's done it all. And he'd like to be another day in yellow. Is that right, Fabian? Yes, it is. You'd think he would hear me, wouldn't you? I am specialised. By Giro, the leader in performance and style that advanced the ride. And by Clean Bottle, the only bottle that unscrews at both ends for easy cleaning. Available at REI, Dick's, Performance, GNC, and online at cleanbottle.com. Life is getting a bit tough in the peloton right now. In the last 5 minutes, the orders have gone out, ride to catch those 3 leaders, because the teams now have lifted the pace and the clock has gone in reverse. It is going to come down, I think, pretty quickly now. This is Marcel Kittel's team, the Argus team, who is driving at the front. The German sprinter in his first Tour de France would love to take a stage win as soon as possible. And the crowd here, now there's a bottle being thrown off, and that man has now decided the bottle's worth more than watching the passage of the Tour de France. And what's going on here now, because this is just a little problem for Lampre. This, in fact, is Simone Stottoni, an Italian on the team. He knows his life's going to get pretty hard in a moment, because his job will be to get up alongside Alessandro Petacchi and try and help him win the stage today. A bit different now at the front, isn't it? The long, thin line of riders. And the raids are coming, with the red jerseys now coming up. His team, BMC of Cadel Evans. So they're going to push up towards the lead as well. So let's check in at the moment with our Garmin team car. There they are, Piper driving.
Was that 2:15? Time check, 2 minutes 15 for those 3 leaders. 35 kilometres in the same direction, same road. And then we enter the ring of Tournai at 3.4 kilometres from the finish. It funnels down to 1 lane. Ty's seen the finish, so he can guide Robbie and David with what he wants to do. Sumi, you're just going to look after Ryder and make sure he's in a good place for those final kilometres coming into the ring, eh? Tommy D and Christian, make sure you're around those guys with Sumi and Ryder, and Dan Martin, you just stay out of trouble as well.
Well, Piper there has just described the complete running, which is very good because that's helped me a lot, I must confess. Now he's named almost all of his riders there. He's got two different situations. He's got Tyler Farrer, they want to try and win the stage, and Robbie, he mentioned, is the South African Robbie Hunter to lead him out. But also look after the Canadian rider Hazedal. He's got to be kept safe. So 3 riders at the front, and the gap is now beginning to come down quite quickly. At 1:34 now, and that's the lowest it's been ever since the breakaway built its lead a long time ago now. They're looking a little bit as though the pressure is really on now. After 4¼ hours they've been racing, 3½ hours they have headed the race.
A long, hard day in the saddle for 2 of them, because one man's taken pretty much of a back seat, and that's Michael Morkov, and he probably is dreaming and praying that they'll get caught quite shortly, because it's been a long ride for him to get a single point in the King of the Mountains classification. Now, the reason the race organisation did that, Phil, was because in the past riders have built up a big lead in the early part of the Tour de France, and what they regard as non-climbers had won the title of King of the Mountains, so they wanted to change the points classification in the King of the Mountains to suit the men who would go first over the top of the big mountain climbs of the Tour.
The blue stripe vertical down those jerseys, that's Team Sky, and they're looking for, even the rider in white with the red bands is the same team, because that's Boysenhagen, the champion of Norway. And at the end of that line, expect to find Mark Cavendish as well, their world champion. This is the routine now. Now, this beautiful wide boulevard very shortly is going to shut down to a much smaller road. This is why the big riders now want to get safe at the front.
That's why the early days of the Tour de France are so very dangerous, because you've got 2 races going on. You've got the men who want to win this bike race overall, trying to stay in the first 15 to 20 places to keep away for any possibility of danger. There's Levi Leipheimer. He always knows when it's the right time to move forward. Alongside him, just the white jersey of Radio Shack Nissen, was Frank Schleck. Cadel Evans, I just caught a glimpse of there as well. You've got the guys who want to win the race overall looking for those first few places, but you've also got the sprinters trying to get into the same patch. Well, what happens? You've got 50 riders or so trying to get into 20 places, and sometimes it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. As they say, a pint doesn't go into a quart doesn't go into a pint pot, but it might this time. Let's see. Interestingly, Cadel Evans, being the winner of the Tour last year, keeping safe as best he can at the front. And we've heard Tyler Farrer also on the same team as rider Hazedal. Hazedal also being marshalled to the front to be kept safe as well.
Well, again, just coming back to talking about the Irish, Phil, I had a quick chat, a long chat this morning, actually, with Sean Kelly, and said, well, you know, what about Dan Martin yesterday, the Irish rider, riding the Tour de France for the first time and an 8th place finish? He said, yeah, that was good for him, but let's not forget he's not a sprinter, and he wants to be careful. He doesn't try and get too excited and get involved in the sprint finish today, because Kelly reckons it's going to be rather a dangerous, risky-taking finish this afternoon in Tournai.
Dan Martin, related to Stephen Roach, as he's his uncle, and also Dan Martin's dad Neil was a great British cyclist, has a Pro 2. He won the British Championship. So a lot of history in the Tour de France today, and it's Dan Martin's first Tour, so I reckon Dad is going to be pretty proud of Dan today. There we go. The road has just narrowed down a little bit here now as we make the right turn here. It's all breathe in for the right-hand bend as we continue. As the riders make a right, we'll take on prime time on the NBC Sports Network. Well, as you rejoin us for 2 of the leaders, it is all over. Markov and Kern have just been picked up after being in the lead for nearly 4 hours today. But the one man who has decided to keep on going, and this is how it happened moments ago, they realized they were being caught, and Anthony Roux, who started the breakaway right at the front here after just 13 miles today, and we're only 18 from the finish, remember, of a 129-mile day. The other 2 did not really resist, and Anthony Roux has gone on by himself. He's the most experienced rider here, along with Christoph Kern, I guess. It's his 3rd Tour as Roux goes clear. And now we go back live, and he's still out in front, but it is only delaying the inevitable, I'm sorry to tell Anthony. His best finish came last year. He was 101st overall. The peloton then have swept up all bar Anthony Paul. As long as they can see him, they'll leave him out there to run out of gas, I think.
Yeah, because having been at the front of this race, Phil, for such a long period of time, to put it into perspective, he will probably be able to hold on to an average speed of about 45 kilometers an hour, which is 27, 28 miles an hour. But the main field, when they get angry on the running towards the finish, they will have an average speed of 60 kilometers an hour, which is 40 miles an hour. They will gobble him up.
Well, here he is. He doesn't look as though he's in pain from that wrist, but he clearly is, because whenever he tries to pull on the handlebars, he winces. We saw him climb up the Namur Citadel with one hand, literally, because the cobblestones were causing too much of a vibration through those. So it's not his wrist, it's actually the two fingers. I think they were dislocated, and they've now been taped together, and so they're very painful.
Well, Phil, you know, if you can continue in the Tour de France, it's the only event, I think, in the world that you really would want to. It's almost, to put a comparison on it, as if you were trying to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, or you're trying to climb Mount Everest. You don't want to get to the top and say, oh, I think I'll go back and come back another day. It is such a pinnacle of the sport. It's the only one that really motivates guys to have the courage to carry on.
Well, this has been a long, long day in the saddle for Roux, breaking away soon after the start today. He was joined by Morkov and Kern. They've gone back in the pack now. They'll do their best to finish in the pack if they can. When Morkov got caught yesterday, he actually lost 4 minutes, and he was only caught in the last 3 miles of the day, and he still lost 4 minutes.
Well, it's a hard thing to do, and you've got to be careful that you don't get taken into the enthusiasm of youth when you come to a race like the Tour de France, because you've got to pay for this energy sometime down the line. You've got to make sure you conserve that energy. You've got to try and recover and recuperate as much as you can. And to throw in what I was always told by the team manager, the way to win the Tour de France is in bed. And that means by every time you get back to the hotel, you lie down, you sleep, you recover. There's no running around. There's no playing on the computer. You've got to sleep and rest as much as possible. And if you go to bed 1 hour a day earlier than your opposition, that's a full day's sleep at the end of the 3-week tour.
Well, that explains exactly why you didn't win the Tour de France, Paul, because you're always going to bed so late. 48 seconds is the gap, 26.9 kilometers to go. The coming together of the peloton again, often split up by these little traffic islands and roundabouts, but now we're all together again. And the riders will only be concerned now about the location of A, their team leader, who's looking for a win in the Tour de France, and B, their team sprinter, to see if they can take him to the finish in Tournai. It is a super sprint in Tournai. A sweeping left-hand bend brings them to the last 300 or 400 meters dead straight up to the finish.
Yeah, and there's not too much in the way of traffic furniture either on the running towards the finish, because they're big, wide boulevards. There's a couple of sweeping bends in between the 3rd and 4th kilometre to go to the finish. A couple of traffic circles inside of the last 2 kilometres, but they've got it very well barried off, and they're nice, wide boulevards. In fact, we circumnavigate the Cathedral of Notre Dame de Tournai.
But the riders won't get to notice that. They'll be concentrating with white knuckles as they race up towards the possibility of a stage win. Time we've been racing now coming 4.5 hours, and this man's been in the lead for 4 of those hours, and he's still defying capture. It's only inevitable. Let's have a look over his shoulder. Can we just see down there? Well, he's still got a service car behind him, which is always an indicator he has a little advantage. So as we look here, you can just about see Mark Cavendish down there. I don't know if you can see it, but I can see the green jersey of Sagan. I think he's decided to mark Cavendish, which will be interesting after that last sprint. He's realising just how quick Mark Cavendish can go at the finish. That will be interesting. Mark won't be happy if he's got Mark Cavendish behind him when he opens up the sprint, as indeed happened with Cancellara yesterday, and Sagan went over him on top of the hill. But as Mark Cavendish has told us, that wasn't a sprint yesterday, and of course it wasn't. It was a strong man's finish. Today will be a sprint, as the peloton safely over the railroad crossing. The only thing that stops the Tour de France would be if those gates went down and the train came by. 25 kilometres, just over 15 miles left to ride to the finish now. The only target for the riders is the checkered flag at the end. This man still picking up this rather nice tail. Well, it's hardly a wind, it's more like a drift behind him today, which is keeping him pedaling nicely. He's got no mates with him anymore. As you can see there, he won the 17th stage of the Vuelta a España, which is the Tour of Spain. He's not a big winner, Anthony Roux, but he's had some nice results in his career. That's the only Grand Tour stage win he's ever had. In all, this man has won 10 stage races in his career, which is not bad for a man that turned pro back in 2008. We'll take another break, and maybe he'll still be away when you come back. The London Olympics are coming to NBC and the NBC Sports Network. Coverage begins July 25th on the NBC Sports Network, leading up to the opening ceremonies, July 27th on NBC. We're looking now at Team Radio Shack. It's looking a little bit like they've got themselves organised now on the right of our picture to try and protect Fabian Cancellara. Just look at the peloton now. Peter Sagan has chosen to follow the wheel of Mark Cavendish, so he must have learned something in that sprint we saw just 31 miles out from the finish. If he gets a lead out by Mark Cavendish, that could result in a win for him, 2 in a row. On the right, we've got Radio Shack setting the pace, and they're looking after Fabian Cancellara. So we are heading towards a very, very good finish. At least I think it's a very good finish. Let's see what Steve Perino can tell us about it.
I don't know anyone that doesn't think this race is not going to come down to a field sprint, in which case the field will be looking for some kind of feature in the final K, but they will be hard-pressed to find it. Last 700 meters, at least a straight shot to the finish line. As far as the wind goes, you got a perfect canopy of trees protecting it, and of course the thousands of people. So it's very likely to come down to raw speed. When you're talking about raw speed, you are talking about Mark Cavendish. So perhaps he was correct this morning when he said that he didn't think Peter Sagan was going to be a factor, even though he won yesterday's sprint and many more earlier this season. Then again, we have not seen Peter Sagan go up against Mark Cavendish in this kind of setting.
Yes, well said, Steve. We'll see what Mark Cavendish can do. This is a cracking race with a lot of terrific sprint finishers today and a lot of unknown quality like Kittel and Sagan. And still he goes, but it's not the time to look over your shoulder. 37 seconds, 35 seconds now is the gap. The peloton are massing. Once they pick him up, Paul, we are going to see a lot of aggressive riding in this group.
Yep, that's 35. Well, it's down to almost 30 seconds, Phil. That's not much more than 500 meters or 500 yards, if you like, in old money. When they get into these big, long straightaways or the big, long boulevards, they can actually see the man that they're chasing. And the guys doing the pacemaking at the front, they won't be flat out right now. They're riding about 90% of their maximum. They will wait until the last possible moment to really put the hammer in and then pull this man back into the fold. They've moved out the red car. That's the race referee. So the peloton right now, Phil, can actually see Anthony Roux, and they can judge how long they want to leave him out there before they catch him.
Under 20 kilometres, just. That was the banner over the road now. 12 miles from the finish. The boys in black of Team Radio Shack have dragged their Fabian Cancellara in yellow back to the front here to just show us this man can do most things. We have seen Cancellara spoil the sprinters' day in Compiègne a couple of years ago when he got to the front and he didn't wait for the sprint. He beat them to the line easily.
There was a couple of tricky little corners on the run into the finish on that occasion, and throw in a few cobblestones to make the recipe right, nice and interesting. And he took advantage of a last-minute acceleration. They all went, wow, where did that come from? But it was too late. By the time they figured out who it was, he'd won himself the stage.
Yes, he most certainly did, and he'd won it wearing the yellow jersey. Dead centre in the white with sky on it. That is Edvald Boysenhagen, who got to almost the win yesterday, and he's only 1 second. That's all he's looking for to become the leader of the white jersey competition. There is the white jersey of the race leader on the day at the moment, and that is Anthony Roux, and there is the pack. Well, this is another angle for you. In the distance, you can see them now, shoulder to shoulder of the road. This rider's getting on with his job. He knows it's inevitable. He is not dreaming of a stage win today.
15 seconds, that's 250 meters is the distance between Anthony Roux. He has done a great job of getting his team lots of publicity this afternoon. At one time, he probably thought there could be a surprise. They could outwit the sprinters, but there are so many sprinters in the race, Phil. There are so many sprinters' teams. There's a powerful lobby of riders who want to make sure that we charge into Tournai all together.
25 years of age, Anthony Roux, just a couple of months ago. Well, I think it won't be all in vain today, because the way he's ridden with that injured hand, his left hand, and the way he's ridden away from his breakaway rivals, the race jury have got to vote him the most aggressive rider of the day, and that's a nice prize for him at least. Another man who's injured at the back here, 155, Luis Leon Sanchez. We've got 3 guys in this race now with injured left hands.
Well, Phil, they're also thinking it's not this year's a complicated year if you're a professional bike rider, because it's not just the Tour de France. It's what comes up a week after the Tour de France, when everybody moves away from France to London for the Olympic Games. Guys like Luis Leon Sanchez, guys like Tony Martin, yeah, they might be injured here, but they need miles, they need kilometres of training and hard competition in their legs to think about winning the time trial in London.
Absolutely right. That'll be based around Hampton Court and down through the Thames Ditton area. As we're watching here, the peloton, 17 seconds. It's all but over now. A rush on the right-hand side. There's so many teams who've got sprinters here that they're all trying to line the men up on different parts of the road. But the team that comes through on the left-hand side in the last kilometre will have the advantage. You may not even notice it's a sweeping left-hander.
This is Marcel Kittel, Phil, number 211. He should not be sitting at the back of the main field. He's been a great prolific winner last year, but when you look at that face, that's not the face of a man who thinks he's going to get the victory this afternoon. You should not be sitting there.
Well, he must be feeling, but he's not feeling okay in my opinion, but he's got teammates riding at the front, and yet he's hanging on the tail. He looked absolutely smashed there. One teammate to look after him. The peloton are coming to pick up Roux. But on that one picture alone, Paul, I reckon we're not going to be talking about Kittel today.
Well, unless he's playing a very clever, crafty game this afternoon. But I have to come back to what I said to you before, Phil. The sprints at the end of the Tour de France are not comparable at all to any of the intermediate sprints. They start so far out from the finish line. You are on the edge of your saddle from 25 and 30 kilometres to go. Not only are you putting in a massive physical effort, the nervousness of staying near the front end of the main field sometimes catches riders out, because this is the biggest bike race in the world.
On the left-hand side, now they've all come back here to Marcel Kittel. The team are dropping back to check on him, what's going on back there. It's not where he wants to be. Jan Huet has come back as well now, and so too is Patrick Grech. That is not good, and he's already a winner this year of 7. Now, there's the leader. Little glance over the shoulder of Anthony Roux. He may not have seen quite this far back, but there they are. And right at the tail of that group is Marcel Kittel. And I really thought he would have mixed it today, Paul, but I would say he's not going to get up amongst it.
Well, first day on the second day on the open road. It's a tough race, the opening stage of the Tour de France, not just from a physical point of view, but from a nervous point of view. There is so much going on for the whole day. You have to remain concentrated. And maybe Kittel is just going through a nasty patch, and he'll recover a little bit later on. Let's not forget the race is 3 weeks long.
Now let's have a look. Coming up on the outside are riders from Team Sky, riders from the Orica Green Edge team, and Matt Goss is tucked right in there with that team on the right-hand side. We've got the purple jerseys of Lampre. They're looking to bring Alessandro Patacchi to the line. Cavendish is right in the centre left of our picture, and he's got his new friend right behind him, Peter Sagan.
Well, there, as you can see them spreading across the road, what's happening, Phil, is although these guys are ready to start the lead-out to charge into Tournai, they don't want to start the lead-out too soon. They want to make sure that the men who make what is called the lead-out train organised, they want to have as much energy as possible left on the running towards the finish line.
It's taken them 4¼ hours to get this man back in their gun sights, but they've done it now. There is the liquid-gas colour centre left. They're looking for Sagan to deliver him to the line. We've got the light-coloured jerseys here of the Mega Farmer quick-step riders as well. They're without their top sprinter, Tom Bonan. He's opted to concentrate on the London Olympics, but they could still take the day out here.
Well, nervous moments. That's Denny Menchov in the red and white jersey, just over to the right-hand side, the left-hand side there. He lies high up in the overall standings. He won't be mixing it in the sprint on the run down towards the finishing line here. And I really don't know how that young man at the front there, Anthony Roux, is hanging on to this advantage, Phil, but surely he will be very quickly back in the main field as we go under 15 kilometers to go.
15 kilometers, 9 miles from the finish, as Anthony Roux is taking this race towards its final destination, Tournai, today. They are hanging him out to dry because they're preoccupied with looking at each other to see who is going to take up the chase. But bet your life they will take up the chase and they'll swamp him. But it could go on for a little bit longer yet.
Well, the rider in the middle there in the pale blue jersey with the red, white and blue bands around the middle, that of course Sylvain Chavanel, the man who dynamited the race on the run up to the finish line yesterday. He started all of the aggression. They're looking after them, and well, it looks to me, Phil, as if all of a sudden Argos Shimano have managed to get themselves organised because they've dragged Marcel Kittel back up to the front.
Well, that is amazing. I don't know what he really looked completely tired at the back of the race, but they're probably, maybe it's just race nerves. This is his first Tour de France. This is a very important result for him today. Everything changes on the Tour de France, including the leader of the race right now, because Peter Velits is bringing the charge up. Sylvain Chavanel it is at the moment, I think. No, it's Velits on the front. It's officially all together. The Tour de France goes into the last 8.5 miles all together. Now they're looking at each other. Now, this is where we're bound for now. This is the finishing line. The caravan are coming home. We'll be there shortly, and with you, when we come back, will Cavendish win? Missile is about to be launched again. Once he gets to the front, there is no one in the world will beat him. Welcome back. The strained faces at the head of the peloton now, the leaders today of the Tour de France, as they're lining up for the first big sprint of this year's Tour. As we're now looking, Tony Martin here rides with a broken scaphoid. There it is. He just wants to finish the day today, the world champion of the time trial. And he's behind the man who also fell off, Luis Leon Sanchez. His left wrist is also strapped up. They have been dropped by the speed of the peloton. It is absolutely flying at the front now. We have seen pictures too of Marcel Kittel, a rider who's in his first Tour de France and is a fast sprinter. He also has been dropped off the back completely now. This is Alessandro's Pataki, the team in mauve. Now we go across to Stuart O'Grady briefly. Now this is Andre Greipel's team. It's every man for himself. Now we've got Berghardt bringing through the team here for Cadel Evans. And also mixing in there is TJ Van Garden as well in the white jersey.
Well, Phil, I'm just getting some information through here actually via the internet. The problem with Marcel Kittel is he's actually got a stomach bug, and that's what's put him off the back. And according to the Argos team, are now going to sprint for Vilas.
Tom Wieler's in the Tour de France for the first time as well, but he's not the same legs as Marcel Kittel, but if you're real, I guess it might be better. Anyway, as we continue now, making the pace here is Michael Shaw, the big Swiss workhorse on the team of Cadel Evans, as they try to whip up this pace. Well, Argos are still at the front, and it's down to Tom Wieler's now to win for...
Oh, when they get around that traffic circle there, the main field splits into two. They go one side to the left, some of them go to the right, and when this happens, what happens is you lose 15 or 20 places. You can see that arm on the left-hand side there, not quite as powerful as the men on the right, and they join forces once again. You can see that the black and red jerseys of BMC Racing, they're not having any of this at all. They want to make it as safe as possible for Cadel Evans. That's the only reason why they're riding at the front end of the main field, to keep the defending champion away from any possibility of being involved in an accident.
Well, if they keep going through the gates like this, the peloton may take up alpine downhill skiing here, because they're dodging in and out as if they're in a slalom. And I don't know if you can spot, but look at the green jersey far right in the centre there. Peter Sagan has adopted the wheel of Mark Cavendish, the world champion, and I reckon he took note of what happened in that sprint down the road about 25 mile back.
Well, you can also see the blue and pink jersey of Lampre. There's a problem for Team Sky.
That was Team Sky Rider stopping. If it wasn't, I looked like it was Michael Rogers, and in which case, sadly, they'll have to leave him at this stage of the race. Had it been, of course, Bradley Wiggins, the whole team would have come back.
It certainly would have been. It's a flat tyre that's been announced for Michael Rogers. Crevaison is crackling over the race radio. Mark Renshaw now sitting in second wheel. He's a little bit too close to the front at 8 kilometres to go. That's 5 miles of racing left. In the second row, you've got Danilo Hondo in the pink and blue jersey of Lampre. He will be looking after Alessandro Patacchi. If they want Alessandro Patacchi to win here this afternoon, he's got to get launched into a very long, fast sprint, because he nowadays, he's lost his top-end speed, but he's still got big power.
So passing through is Adam Hansen with the Lotto on the top of his shoulders there. He's looking to keep this pace high. The man at the back of that lineup, and Lotto look to be the best organised at the moment, is Andre Greipel. Another hazardous obstacle has been overcome as we all go back together again. And there's a lot of riders clearly want this. The Liquigas Cannondale are there for Sagan. The Lampre ISD squad are there for Patacchi. They're all moving their men forward.
Richie Port at the back there for Team Sky. He was struggling to stay in contact with the main field. Everybody is waiting for the moment to finally set it up. And look at Cadel Evans and George Hincapie there, the duo from BMC Racing. Hincapie's not thinking about getting a position on the stage today. He's just thinking about looking after his man. And his man is Cadel Evans, the defending champion, riding at the front, because if you ride at the back on the run into Tournai here this afternoon, it's a very, very dangerous place to be.
I don't know if you noticed them, Paul, but the man in the polka dot jersey, Michael Morkov, is right up here at the front. Now, he's been in the breakaway all day, but he didn't work that hard. He is a very, very good sprint finisher. Surely he's not going to try and take them on after that long break today.
That fluorescent yellow bike there is mounted by Alessandro Patacchi. Behind him, it's George Hincapie, Cadel Evans. Look at the dust starting to come up here. There you can see, in fact, that's an amazing move, because Michael Morkov is still at the front.
Well, as the line is drawn out on the right of our picture, this is like just a moving mosaic at the moment as riders dash across to grab somebody else's wheel as they try to work out who is going to be the man to follow to the line today. As we close in on the finish, 3.8 miles, 6.1 kilometres to go. The riders are burning up the streets into Tournai now. There is Michael Morkov, the king of the mountains leader, in the lead all day, now looking to take the boys on in the sprint.
Well, Wiggins was pretty much isolated, but he wants to stay at the front end of the main field. What Michael Morkov has come to do is ride at the front to try and lead out for Jonathan Cantwell, and then, of course, JJ Haedo, the Argentinian rider participating in the Tour de France for the first time. Everybody now is nervous. They really are getting their game organised. They're looking around, they're trying to communicate, but the noise in the main field is very difficult. When you're coming into a town like this, you've got the crowd shouting, you've got the wheels whistling.
We are looking at the whole peloton of the Tour de France now, coming into the 5-kilometre mark of the Tour de France. All of the sprinters are moving to the front, and all of the overall leaders are trying to move to the front simply to keep out of trouble. This is a real battle to the line today as they go shoulder to shoulder. A total movement of the peloton.
Another thing to do in a situation like this, Phil, is you've got to keep yourself very, very alert. You know, you might not even try and touch your brakes. What you've got to do is use your arms and your shoulders. Even physical contact can slow you down at a moment like this. As long as you don't do it in a dangerous way. These guys race together throughout the whole of the year. They don't want to take somebody down. It really is amazing. The speed that we are looking at right now, Phil, we are doing about 60 kilometres an hour, which is 40 miles an hour. And Cadel Evans there, sitting right in the middle of your screen, is sitting comfortably at the front end of the peloton, not thinking about the sprint, but making sure that if there's an accident, he's not going to be involved in it.
Well, two Australians in the first three at the moment here, and are still on the far. The boy in green here, Peter Sagan, has found himself a teammate to hide behind at the moment. It'll probably be Daniel Oss who will look after him towards the finish. A little lull in the pace, and they scurry up the outside. This is a good piece of riding by Cadel Evans, though, trying to keep out of trouble. He did it yesterday. He's at it again today.
Yeah, Peter Sagan's only got one man with him, though, and that is Daniel Oss, and I think he's a little bit too far to the front for the moment. You've got to Bide your time in a moment like this. 4 kilometers to go. You're now starting to see the blue jerseys of Garmin Sharp coming forward. That, of course, is for their big man, Tyler Farrar. But all of a sudden, you see how it changes. You get swamped by another wave coming up from the far side of the main field. And from first or second or fifth position now, you're back into 20th. You've got to start that fight all over again.
But look at the size of the peloton. They're shedding riders out the back, one after another here as they turn in towards the finishing line. All of the important men are at the front. You could see by the twitching of Cadell Evans' face here that it is extremely hard. TJ Van Garderen, the American rookie in the white jerseys, up there now. The Rabobank are trying to get Mark Renshaw through. There is again a change of pattern at the front.
George Hincapie, Big George they call him, from South Carolina, lives in South Carolina nowadays anyway, riding like a man possessed. He again, Phil, is not thinking about stage victories. He's thinking about how dangerous it is, how the main field can split.
I don't know if you saw that Sky Rider go halfway down the peloton there. He almost disappeared over that crash barrier as they went right. That will have caused a lot of alteration of riders in the position. That was a tricky left-hand bend. I've just checked, Paul, they've just done a kilometre in 53 seconds.
That is unbelievable. That's almost 45 miles an hour, the average speed, these guys. There's Greg Henderson, the Kiwi rider, just in the middle there. He's riding in front of Andre Greipel, but all of a sudden it changes once again. Swamped as soon as the pace drops. Cavendish is hovering around in the middle, and I just noticed that Bosenhagen looks to be looking after Cavendish this afternoon. Bosenhagen, the Norwegian national champion on Team Sky. But for the moment, every time there's a lull in the pace, bang, a different team comes forward. Lamprey now over to the right-hand side in the pink and blue jerseys, looking after Alessandro Patacchi.
I take my hat off to the Argus Shimano boys in white at the front. They've lost their king sprinter, blown out the back. He is sick in Marcel Kittel. They have a stand-in Tom Wheelers, but he won't live, in fairness to Tom, with the boys in this sprint peloton here. Two separate lines now going across the road. On the left-hand side of the road, Andre Greipel's team, and we are now 2 kilometres. Another incredibly quick race. Paul, to win the sprint, you've got to hold on to this speed before you even start.
You do. You've got to be riding at 45 miles an hour before you can kick it up to almost 50 miles an hour in that final explosion to the line. The last 2 kilometres, Phil, is going to take them less than 2 minutes, and you've got to zigzag around these nasty little roundabouts and stay in position. Hold your position. Don't even dream of touching your brakes. If you touch your brakes, mate, you will disappear from the first 15 places and be gone. Lotto Belisol have got the control. Third place there is the Kiwi, Greg Henderson. Looking over the shoulder, Marcus Siebert is on the front, the German rider on Lotto. Comfortably in 4th place, Andre Greipel, but I've noticed Bernie Eisel in there. He'll be looking after Mark Cavendish.
It is up to Greg Henderson, second in our picture at the moment, to lead out Andre Greipel. He's done it with great success in Australia this year. Now, can he do it here in the Tour de France in Belgium? They're now looking for the 1,000 metre red kite. And Sagan, in the green jersey, has come right up into 4th place. Well, Mark Cavendish says he doesn't count Sagan today. He better start taking notice now.
They've got inside the flag now, indicating 1,000 metres to go, and it's going to be less than 60 seconds, and still it's Lotto Belisson have got a very good control at the front end of this main field. Battling up through on the left-hand side in that white jersey is Robbie Hunter looking after Tyler Farrar. Cavendish is not far away now, but looks to me as if Lotto Belisson have got control. That's Andre Greipel in 3rd position.
Yes, but in 4th position is the green jersey of Peter Sagan, and we've got Tyler Farrar trying to mix it as well. Mark Renshaw boxed in at the moment in the centre. Cavendish has picked up the wheel of Greipel. Now, can he launch himself from it as they start going shoulder to shoulder? This is it now. Greipel is holding off his move till he has to as they go for the line. And still lost on his wheel comes Cavendish. Cavendish, can he get round his old teammate and win? A final kick by Mark Cavendish. Is the missile going to hit his target for the 21st time? And yes, he does. Mark Cavendish gets it on the line. Win number 25. Incredible.
Well, that was an amazing move there. He waited for the last moment. He didn't have any teammates to look after him. Win number 21 at the Tour de France for Mark Cavendish. He's looking for 22 to be the best sprinter in this great event. But amazing. That's Matty Goss diving across there to get the wheel of Mark Cavendish. The detractors of this man, Phil, I don't know why they don't just leave the books behind, because when he has to come up to the big occasion, he knows how to do it. This is the moment. Andre Greipel perfectly led out there by Greg Henderson, but tucked into his wheel, using the slipstream of the big German. gentlemen, Mark Cavendish waits for the right moment to launch the first kick. But this is a very special sprinter, Mark Cavendish. He's got the double sprints. He's got the double acceleration. That's Matty Goss there in third position, trying to fight up to come up alongside him. The lunge for the line. If you've been a great track rider like Mark Cavendish, you know how to time it to perfection.
Yes, Mark Cavendish all smiles. His account is open again. His first win at the first attempt for him today. 21 victories now. He's one short of the top sprinters' victories, which is Andre Darragard.
And Phil, what better way to win a stage in the Tour de France as the world champion with that magical jersey on your shoulders?
Indeed, indeed. Well, let's have a look at the stage results here. What an incredible sprint. That man, when he launches himself, is unstoppable. He wins. Everybody gets the same time today. Andre Greipel, Matthew Goss, Tom Wiehlers. I take my hat off to Tom for that sprint, because fourth place when he was told he had to sprint because of the sickness to Marcel Kittel. And that is Wiehlers in the all-white jersey centre picture, but Cavendish is the one we're looking at. His final lunge to the line, there's nothing in it. He beats his ex-teammates Greipel and Goss on the right. And that will be a very, very pleasing victory for the world champion, Mark Cavendish, as he continues to show the boys that when it matters, he can deliver. And that's his 9th victory of the year. And also his 97th victory since his career started back in 2007. Yes, he looks like about half a wheel from that angle of the photo finish. Matthew Goss in third place, so he gets a lot of points there as well. So as we continue on, don't forget, we'll continue on with our coverage of the Tour de France as we will coming on the Proform.com post-race report. Will follow podium standings, interviews, and if we can't get them for you, then we'll give them in the prime time later, but we'll do our best. Don't go away as we complete the day's situation in the Tour de France. Mark Cavendish, sprinter extraordinaire, gets his 21st stage win of a Tour de France. Well done.
The mountains, the forest, and the sea. They render men savage. They develop the fierce, but yet do not destroy the human. The Tour de France. Coverage continues tomorrow at 8 a.m. on the NBC Sports Network.
Welcome back. This is the Proform.com post-race report. We have a quick spin around the lovely chateaus here in Tournai. Let's have first a look at the Road ID ride of the day. It has to be in the sprint finish, although Anthony Roux was certainly a big candidate, but just look at this, one of his great sprints, this one. Nobody to help him, no team to lead him out. He flashes out of the shadows of Andre Greipel, and Mark Cavendish crosses the line in first place. As they continue towards the line now, another view for you here. 21 wins now, and he's one short of Andre Darragad's 22 as a sprinter. He's not far off taking that record off him, maybe later in this week, maybe even tomorrow, of course. And that was our Road ID ride of the day. And don't forget, if you want a chance to win daily prizes at the 2013 Trek Madone, head over to roadid.com/ride and make your prediction for tomorrow's ride of the day stage winner. I should imagine a lot of you might fancy the chances of Mark Cavendish tomorrow. Well, we're just panning down now back into the finishing area. That's where we are down there. This was the greeting awaiting Mark Cavendish at the finish and all of the riders he was thanking. He told Edward Boysenhagen that just before the line, he says, forget it, do your own thing. And he had to seek wheels for himself. He found the right wheels, and he certainly has the speed in those legs. I make that his 97th win of a career which started back in 2007, and his 9th win of this season. There we are. Just under 5 hours in the saddle today for Mark Cavendish to win the day. Greipel, Goss, Tom Wiehlers, terrific sprint by Tom in the end. He got 4th for August Shimano. Pataki was in the mix for 5th place. He's the man currently with the most wins on the professional cycling circuit of 176 in total. but he's not sprinting like the good old days, I'm afraid to say. But this was a battle of the sprinters. Peter Sagan, he knows there are other sprinters in the race now. He comes home 6th. Hutrovic, FDJ sprinter, was 7th. JJ Hayedo in his first tour, he got 8th. Mark Renshaw was 9th. And Tyler Farrar did give it a go today, crossing the line in 10th place. The Spanish sprinter Rojas was 11th. France's sprinter Eno got 12th. And then came Kenny Van Hummel, also a very good sprinter, 14th. And the Japanese sprinter Arashiro was there in 15th. Oscar Freire, a little bit hot for Oscar today in the sprint. He got 16th, though, 3 times a world champion. Boysenhagen hung on in there for 19th. And Kunda Court on Olga Shimano. He's the lead-out man for Tom Wheelers. Still crossed the line in 20th place. There he is, resplendent in his World Championship stripes. A world champion likes to be a winner in the year he reigns, and the Mark has really honoured that jersey this year. 8 wins, and now he's just notched the number 9 in the Tour de France. That's the British reporter Ned Bolting there, who is welcoming Mark Cavendish around the back of the tribune. Well, we're waiting now for the presentation of stage winner and prizes. I think we can now have a look at the Michelob Ultra overall standings as they shake out. There won't be any changes in the end. They all came home together. Cancellara pulls on the yellow in a few minutes' time again. Wiggins holds on to his 7 seconds deficit. TJ keeps his white 10 seconds in 4th place. Boysenhagen challenges him in that white jersey competition, a second behind him. He's got 5th place overall at the moment. TJ's enjoying his moment, and so too is Fabian Cancellara. Cadel Evans, the last year's winner, is in a very strong place in 8th position, 17 seconds behind Cancellara. And Ryder Hagedal is in 10th place, winner of the Tour of Italy. Well, it was excitement all the way. This was a terrific last kilometre of bike racing to commentate on, as you see these riders now dashing for any space that opened up in the road. As there, Peter Sagan there in the green jersey, not used to being so far back at this stage of a sprint finish this year. He's had 14 wins, remember. Suddenly finds these boys also want to win a stage of the Tour de France. Lotto looked to have done it perfectly well at this point, because on the far right of our screen, Greipel is the last of the 3 riders. Sagan was following the right wheel for sure, while Mark Cavendish was still dicing around in the middle, trying to grab a wheel, and in the end, he got onto the right wheel because he broke into the Lotto train. And that's what he wanted to do. He didn't have a train of his own. And then he chased his old teammate, Andre Greipel. And once Mark Cavendish starts to work, the radar kicks in. He sees the finishing line, and he always times it to perfection. This is a very special stage win. The 2 riders who finished behind him, 2nd and 3rd, are his former teammates, so they know all about the speed of Mark Cavendish. That was a terrific sprint finish. Matthew Goss scoring as well, green jersey points there with 3rd. And Andre Greipel a little bit upset when he just got pipped on the line. You have to be inch perfect to win a stage of the Tour de France. His team did everything they could do. They couldn't quite deliver. Let's have a look at that green jersey situation then, because it should make intriguing reading now. Tomorrow Peter Sagan rides in green, but this time it's his jersey at the moment. He leads now with 78 points. Cavendish comes up into 2nd place with his win today. Cancellara didn't score any points today, so he drops to 3rd. Matthew Goss has come up into 4th, and Edvald Boysenhagen, Eddie the Boss, is in 5th place now, 42 points for him. This is going to be a big competition this year, as well as the race for yellow, because a lot of guys are in the mix. So as we spin around, I think we can go down to Craig Hummer now, who is talking with the Maillot Jaune of the Tour de France, Cancellara.
Have a blasé attitude, but out on the road today, was it just a business as usual?
Yeah, business as usual. Bringing the jersey to the finish without crashes, and that's, I think, we're done. We spend as less as possible energy, but still, the final was pretty intense, pretty hard, and yeah, I feel I had not my best day, but that's, I think, is normal, and looking now for tomorrow to have a good day again, and then defending again the yellow jersey.
That's your music. Go get the jersey.
Thank you.
Well, lovely man. Thanks very much indeed, Craig. He's forgotten which way to go now, as he's now headed to the podium, Fabian Cancellara. A very gracious man indeed. Let's see what's coming up now. There's the empty space, Paul. Should be Mark Cavendish first up. He's proud of that sprint, and why shouldn't he be? To win a world champion, and get your 9th win of the year as a world champion is very, very special.
Well, you've got to come up with a plan sometimes, Phil, and I think the big thing that Mark Cavendish has to his advantage, he's got an incredible background on the track. He was a great Madison rider, and to win the Madison, you've got to win sprints from the front to back and without a lead-out man, and he certainly was without that this afternoon.
Great Britain, throughout history, has never had a sprinter like him, and he does seem to be unbeatable. He's drawn to that line. Once he turns on that radar, he stays on course all the way. 21 times he's crossed that finishing line first in a Tour de France now. He now aims at Andre Darragard, who's looking for 22 next time.
I just noticed the first man to congratulate Mark Cavendish there on the left-hand side is the King of Belgium, the King Albert II. And a great enthusiast. So that's Raymond Poulidor as well, just on the left-hand side with the grey hair. He's, I believe, Phil, he will be participating in his 50th Tour de France next year.
Yes, but not as a rider now, but he was a great rider in the Tour de France. Never the yellow jersey, and that made his reputation, but a permanent man on the podium as a winner. Mark Cavendish, Greipel and Matthew Goss, the order over the line. Peter Sagan will be the leader in the green jersey points competition after that sprint today, but now welcome Fabian Cancellara. A day out for him and another yellow jersey at the end.
Good day out for Fabian Cancellara. He was in the right place at the right time throughout the day, and his team on this occasion were able to take a little bit of a backseat because it was such an important rendezvous today in Tournai for the sprinters.
He's lost his lead in the green jersey, but that wasn't part of the plan anyway. He's kept his lead in the yellow, and that most certainly was.
But when you look at Fabian Cancellara, you realise this man is a serious talent, and I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't keep this yellow jersey right the way down to the foot of the Alps.
Well, the Vosges are the first target. That's stage 7. We go up a very, very nasty climb of some 3 miles, so we'll see. There's King Albert II, the King of Belgium, saying some special words to Fabian. He's a great enthusiast, by the way, King Albert.
But Phil, just looking at the finishing of the top 10 riders, every one of those top 10 riders on the stage today were pedigreed sprinters.
Indeed. Now let's have a look at this. This is the information on Mark Cavendish. There's the man who's won most stages, 34. Now Mark Cavendish comes in the frame at 21 now. He's moved ahead of Nicolas Franz, who is a Luxembourger, and Andre Darragard, that's his target. He's the only sprinter there. He's got 22. So let's have another look at how you fire a missile and make sure you hit the target. He locked in on that finishing line. He just come over the top of Greipel. Friends and rivals alike, and he just pipped him on the line. It looked very close on the camera there, but in fact it was half a wheel. Now back to the podium, because there's the presentation of the new green jersey. This time it is for Peter Sagan himself. We quickly switched down to watching Cancellara sign the VIP maillot jaune. But here he is. Peter Sagan now is truly the leader of this race on the points classification. Very, very good. He's trying to do everything. He's only 22 years of age. He mixes himself up with just about every form of the racing, and the baby-face killer is on top again. So will the flowers go with him? Yes, they're going home as he shakes hands with Bernard Hinault and King Albert, the monarch of Belgium, as the race tonight says farewell to a very, very intriguing 3 days of racing here.
Yep, well, Peter Sagan learning the trade, Phil, but it still amazes me that at 22 years of age, he rides like a seasoned professional. He's been around for 10 years. He now leads Mark Cavendish with 78 points to 63, and Fabian Cancellara not getting any points today, but as you said rightly, he's not really concerned about the green jersey, Fabian Cancellara. He wants to keep hold of that yellow one for as long as possible.
We're only a couple of miles from the French frontier. We'll be heading over to France tomorrow. Quite a lot of hints. Well, there he is, Michael Morkov. The way to take the lead in the King of the Mountains is to attack. He did it yesterday for 5 hours. He did it again today for 4 hours. There's the result. A lead in the King of the Mountains.
And he still had enough energy left at the end to try and help his own teammate, JJ Haedo, get a top finish in that sprint to the line.
Amazing in his first Tour de France as well. He's 27 years of age now because he spent most of his time racing on those indoor velodromes. He has a Beijing Olympic silver medalist show for that. He'll be in London again, but he won't be in London on the track. track this time. He'll ride the road races.
Yes, a lot of the riders we're looking at over the next 3 weeks of racing will be moving across almost immediately after the Tour de France finishes to London to make themselves ready for the Olympic Games. And the man who defends that title of the time trial in the Olympic Games, none other than the leader of this event at the moment, Fabian Cancellara.
Well, let's see if we can tell you the overall situation in the polka dot standings. Only 4 points after all that effort, which means he's won 4 climbs so far, Mikhail Morkov. Peter Sagan has scored 1 in that, and Urtasun also scored 1. But he's got a good lead. Tomorrow he's got a few little climbs to sort matters out, including the finish is also a 4th category climb. So there is room for change tomorrow, but I've just got the feeling Morkov might hang on to that lead tomorrow.
He'll be looking to, if he can, there's a 3rd category climb down towards the end as well, which offers a few more points as we get to see the man who leads the Best Young Rider competition, of course. This is an American rider with, in fact, a Dutch-sounding name, TJ van Garderen.
And this is a moment he really looks forward to. So as we see TJ van Garderen here, as he continues now to take on another white jersey, his Best Young Rider, defending his 1 second lead over his rival Edvald Boysenhagen from Norway. He's doing well, and his main job here is to help Cadel Evans, his team captain, win the Tour de France. He's still finding plenty of room for himself. He shakes hands with one of the greatest cyclists ever, Bernard Hinault there. And don't forget, tune in nightly at 8 p.m. Eastern for Tour de France Prime Time on the NBC Sports Network, where we'll have all the interviews that we couldn't show you today. We'll get them into our special race show on Prime Time, and of course with the Ask Bobby segment. Try to stump him, as I say. Tomorrow our live coverage continues, stage 3. We head into France now, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on the NBC Sports Network. It's been a great race, another terrific day of racing. For a full schedule, race highlights, log on to NBCSports.com. All our great clothing here is provided by Peter Miller. Well done today to Mark Cavendish and also Fabian Cancellara, who keeps his maillot jaune for another day. It's a hillier day tomorrow. It could be a day for the sprinters. Then again, somebody else could have their big moment in the Tour de France. From everybody here in Tournai, until tomorrow, goodbye.
Sports Network thanks you for watching this presentation of the Tour de France.